On the continent of Gaia, monsters have been randomly disappearing for several years. At first, people thought they were being wiped out, but it turned out they were actually being moved to another dimension. And that's exactly what one particular mage had been waiting to study for himself. This mage has been digging into the disappearance of these monsters for a long time, and even though he still has no clue why or how they're being teleported, he's way more focused on how he can get that power for himself. With all the research he managed to gather, he set up a magic circle in a dungeon known as the Great Labyrinth. Finally, he gets to see his work come to life as he tweaks the coordinates and builds a mana connection. Then, he steps into the magic circle to finally move to the new dimension. A bright light surrounds him as the spell starts kicking in. The aura coming off the spell is intense enough to cover the whole area, and suddenly, everything stops. The mage notices the airflow and temperature of the place have changed, but not because he's in a new dimension, it's because now he's outside the dungeon. To be more exact, it was the dungeon that got teleported to another dimension, leaving him in a hole where it used to be. In another dimension, a young dude stares at an interdimensional portal that just popped open in his attic. He can only wonder what the heck is going on. His day had been pretty normal up until a few seconds ago. Earlier, during his shift, Kang Jin-hyuk was checking out the college kids around him. Seeing them reminded him of when he also had something he was passionate about. But now, as a ranked E hunter, he doesn't have that kind of luxury. His buddy walks up and asks why he's wasting time when there's work to do. They gotta hustle, since they haven't even knocked out half the job. After a long day at work, the two guys kick back in their van, but Jin-hyuk's rockin' surprisingly light clothes despite the cold weather. That's cause he's a hunter, and one of the perks of being a hunter is being able to handle extreme temps. It's such a basic thing that even D-ranks get it, which means Jin-hyuk can save cash on heating at home. Hunters also got tons of other dope benefits, but even with that, Jin-hyuk works part-time as a laborer. That's because he's broke, and since all the guilds in the area are hogging the hunter gigs, there's not much he can do about it. All this mess is thanks to some serial killer who's been offing hunters from the big-name guilds. Since they haven't caught the guy, the guilds have been snatching up all the hunter jobs around. But today might just be Jin-hyuk's lucky break. A loud noise followed by screaming comes from the school area. This is his shot. Chaos can only mean monsters are in the zone, and taking out just a few could score him enough cash to last the whole year. That hope crashes the moment he gets there, when some dude rushes in and shoves him back, and a bunch of other hunters show up. The Titan Guild, who runs the area, is already there and locks down the situation instantly. Doyen, the guild's vice leader, tells him to bounce before he ends up getting killed. The gap between a plain old D-rank hunter and an A-rank from a major guild is just way too huge to even dream of crossing. With no way to change anything and his dreams straight up crushed, he heads off to his next part-time gig hoping it'll at least throw him some cash. At night, Jin-hyuk gets home feeling hella defeated. Suddenly, a noise from the back of his apartment grabs his attention. He goes to check it out, and finds some kind of portal to another world. Looking closer, he comes face to face with a bunch of goblins. The goblins don't seem to see him, which makes zero sense to Jin-hyuk. He can walk through without his body tripping out. This might be the chance he's been waiting for. Then, he heads downstairs to clear his head. This is definitely a dungeon that was just a concept until now. If it had popped up anywhere else, he'd be way happier, but it had to show up in his attic. The smartest move would be to report the incident to the association, but if he did that, they'd kick him out of his place using the whole site investigation excuse. So the only move that made sense was to keep it all for himself. First thing he needed to figure out was if the monsters could cross over through the portal. At least they couldn't see him, which was dope, cause with his skills he could only take on maybe 2 or 3 goblins max. If more monsters came charging through, he'd be toast. With nothing to lose, he takes a deep breath and steps through the portal, landing on the first floor of a dungeon labyrinth. He barely has time to scope the place before a goblin attacks from the left. He dodges a phase shot just in time and backs up into his attic. The goblin looks around confused, swinging at the air cause it can't find him. Looks like they really can't see the portal, which means they can't cross to the other side either. Now that he knows that, there's no reason to be scared. He grabs a baseball bat and jumps back through the portal to take on the goblin. He smacks the goblin in the cheek, sending it flying, then finishes it off with a stab to the chest. With the goblin down, he lifts his bat and stares at it, cracking its face and finishing the job on the spot. This was the first time he hunted monsters solo, and since he didn't have to split XP with anyone, it was all his. With the goblin toast, his level, which hadn't moved in 3 years, went up right away. The goblin's corpse was his too, and he could score up to 3 mil if he sold it at the right places. The next day, he hauls the goblin's corpse to a hunter market, and tries to sell it to a dealer. After checking it out closely, the dealer figures our guy doesn't have much dungeon experience, 'cause the way he handled the goblin dropped its market value big time. Even so, he still pulled over 3 million won, just like he hoped. All he had to do was give the name of the area where he hunted the goblin, and he'd get paid right then. But that was info Jin Hyu couldn't give up to anyone. If someone found out about the dungeon in his attic, all his gains would go down the drain. While he's trying to figure out how to dodge the mess he's in, a squad of hunters from the Black Dragon Guild storms in like a pack of hyenas. Someone jacked a kill in their turf, and they weren't happy. At first, they thought Jin Hyuk was the one who did it, and came up to press him. But the dealer pointed them at a blonde hunter who had no clue what was going down. The hunters pounced on him, and beat him till he was barely conscious. He had trespassed, and tried to hunt monsters without permission. For all they knew, he could be the serial killer they'd been hunting. With the dude barely able to talk, they dragged him out of the building to keep grilling him. That guy, beat to a pulp, could have totally been Jin Hyuk. Seeing that go down and knowing he couldn't lie about where the goblin came from, he changed his mind about selling it there. If he didn't want to risk his neck, he had to find another way to sell his loot without messing with the goon squads from the big guilds. As soon as Jin Hyuk got back home, he decided to head back to the dungeon and grind to get stronger. Before going in, he had to gear up with whatever it took to stay alive in such a sketchy place. He packed a teleport stone that'd let him bail out if things got dicey and bounce back to his apartment, plus a monster tracking compass that showed anything creepy within a 50-meter radius. Loaded with that, and his trusty baseball bat, he dipped into the dungeon for another grind session. He went on a killing spree, leveling up with every monster he smacked. True to its name, the goblin maze was crawling with those dudes, making it the perfect XP farm for someone at his stage. After a long grind, his inventory was almost maxed out. He only had room for one more goblin, and since it was the last one, he figured it might as well be a big one so he could score more cash. The compass showed a goblin headed his way, which was clutch. All he had to do was post up and ambush it before it saw him. He ducked behind a corner and waited for the right moment to swing his bat. But it wasn't a goblin he hit. It was a super short dude. The guy started yelling in some weird language Jin Hyuk didn't get. He quickly bowed to say sorry, which chilled the dude out enough for him to pull out 2 necklaces from his bag and hand one over to Jin Hyuk. As soon as he put it on, he could catch what the guy was saying, and he realized 2 things. First, the dude was mega pissed, which was fair, since Jin Hyuk clocked him in the face with a bat. And second, the guy wasn't just a guy, he was a dwarf, like straight out of fantasy novels. The dwarf kept ranting while Jin Hyuk picked up the stuff scattered on the floor. Everything he grabbed looked super high-end, but he barely had time to check it out thanks to the yelling. The dwarf noticed his bat and snatched it, demanding to know where he got it, which totally threw Jin Hyuk off. It was nothing special, but the dwarf looked dead serious about it. It was just a plain oil aluminum baseball bat, but the dwarf swore it was made of some rare metal called orichalcum. To the dwarf, this basic bat was so baller he thought no amount of cash could buy it. He offered Jin Hyuk a trade, some rare items for the bat, and with no reason to say no, Jin Hyuk followed him to his workshop. The dwarf took the bat deeper into the workshop while Jin Hyuk scouted out the weapons laying around, wondering which one to pick. The dwarf came back not long after with his bat, but now it was glowing this intense red and kinda sparkled. Jin Hyuk was like, "Is this even still my bat?" But the dwarf confirmed that glow was part of orichalcum's vibe. The metal started off soft and lame, but got tough and beastly the more it got enchanted. That word, enchanted, caught Jin Hyuk's attention. Apparently, somehow, the dwarf had enchanted his weapon. An enchanted item was a super rare drop that only came from top-tier monsters, like grade A and up. After taking a few swings with his upgraded bat, Jin Hyuk could tell it felt totally different than what he remembered. It was hard to believe something that strong could have been handmade. This dwarf and this whole dungeon might actually be the lucky break he'd been hoping for all along. Checking his stats in the status menu, he found out the bat was now a legendary baseball, with S-rank durability and auto-repair. His plain aluminum bat had leveled up into some rare legendary gear. If he could sell it, he'd make bank, but the bat was soul-bound, meaning he couldn't cash it out. Still, having a legendary item was a major W. Plus, there were still other ways to make money. His inventory was stacked with goblin corpses he could flip for profit. Only problem? There's nowhere to offload them without catching heat from the guilds. The only other option was the black market in the hunter world. They don't ask questions and deal with bodies fast. And they're super easy to reach. They always hand out business cards to low-level hunters needing quick cash, which meant he already had a bunch to pick from. He headed home and used one to find the address for one of those black markets. The card looked super sus, but right now, he had no better move. While he was scoping the area for signs the place was real, a guy called out to him from above. His name was Assistant Director Cho Hyung-il, and he invited Jin-hyuk to the office to meet his boss. There, he met Lee Junchul, a loan shark dressed up as a loan officer, who also flipped monster corpses on the black market. They asked to check out the bodies before talking payment, and Jin-hyuk pulled them out to show. Both guys were shook by how many corpses he had stashed. Even though Jin-hyuk was clearly a rookie, he'd stacked up 20 goblin corpses. All of them were in great shape. Their heads were bashed in from bat damage, but other than that, they were mint. So mint that Assistant Director Cho couldn't even hide how hyped he was to get them. The three guys started talking prices, but got cut off when black market workers burst in, yelling that a monster had shown up in the area. There's a rare chance a monster corpse can lure in more monsters, and apparently dropping 20 fresh goblin bodies on the ground was enough to send out a signal. Worst part? The monsters that pulled up were 2 orcs, way above Jin-hyuk's level. At that point, the only shot he had was to grab the monster corpses and dip ASAP. But it was already too late. The first monster rolled up on them and looked ready to tear them apart. Since Jin-hyuk was the only hunter around, he was the only one even close to strong enough to step up. But that didn't mean he could win, and the orc rushed him with its battle axe. He dodged the first swing, but the second one was coming straight for his head from way too close to duck. It looked like this was it, and he was gonna die like a chump, until suddenly, his newly enchanted bat summoned itself from his inventory and blocked the hit just in time. The block hit so hard it sent the orc flying back for a sec. That seemed to be another of its enchanted perks, presence detection. If that's how his new bat rolled, maybe he actually had a shot. The orc charged again, but this time Jin-hyuk was locked in and ready. He gripped the bat and swung low, straight at the orc's knee, throwing off its balance. With the monster staggered, he landed another swing right in its face, snapping its neck and dropping it instantly. Taking down just one orc shot his level from 24 to 36 on the spot. No time to flex though, cause the second orc found him and came rushing in. But now he was locked and loaded. He dodged, zipped behind the orc, and slammed his bat into its back before repositioning and landing a final hit right to the head, killing it instantly too. That's how he managed to wreck 2 orcs in seconds, proving just how cracked that enchanted weapon really was. Once the shock was over, he asked them with a smug attitude to restart the negotiations and add the corpses of the 2 dead orcs to the deal. That day, he went back home with a cocky attitude, having managed to convince the guys to give him 15% more than market price. The amount of cash in his bank account almost felt like a dream. Now that he had finally ditched the goblin corpses, all he had to do was focus on hunting. Since he saved the black market dealer and his crew, they decided to keep doing business with him, which means he'd never have to stress about where to sell the corpses again. That's cause they probably realized Jin-hyuk wasn't just some low-level punk selling stolen corpses, but a high-tier hunter, strong enough to wipe out 2 orcs with barely any effort. Still, even with his enchanted bat and new strength, there was no way his current gear would let him hunt high-grade monsters. He had just one move left: upgrade his gear, and if he played his cards right, he might even score some for free. The next day, he bought a box full of beer cans and booze for the dwarf, since the guy was crazy about aluminum. To him, this was like striking gold. The dwarf couldn't believe everything in the box was made of orichalcum. He tried the beer but spat it out right away. The taste sucked. To calm him down and dodge another fight, Jin-hyuk handed him some soju. This time hit different, and the taste was enough to chill the dwarf for now, though it still felt like something was missing. Taking his shot, the dwarf asked Jin-hyuk for a favor. He needed him to dig something up, mithril or... But like, what the hell did or have to do with booze? Jin-hyuk wanted free gear, so he had no choice but to agree to whatever the dwarf threw at him. If that was the best shot at getting gear, then so be it. He dove deeper into the labyrinth, and hit a clearing in a forest. This spot was way bigger than he thought. A system menu popped up in front of him, telling him he had hit the 2nd level of the labyrinth. Now he had the chance to register the spot as a teleport point. He had no clue what a teleport point even was, but hit accept anyway. That opened up a portal in front of him. This portal lets him hop between the 1st and 2nd floor easy, like in a video game. With that set up, he headed deeper into the labyrinth to find the mithril, or the dwarf wanted. The second floor was called Dogs and Skeletons. And just like the first one with goblins, this one was packed with wild monster dogs jumping at him. These dogs were way weaker than the orcs he fought a few days ago, which meant they were free XP. He readied his bat and charged headfirst into a pack of dogs attacking him. By the end of the fight, he had smoked 25 orcs and scooped up their corpses. At market value, those corpses should net him a clean 200 million. But he couldn't let the hype of all that cash mess with him. He still had a job to do, mining some mithril ore. He pushed deeper into the dungeon and ran into skeletons. After all, this floor was called Dogs and Skeletons. Skeletons are a pain in the ass type of monster. You can't sell their bodies for cash, and the only way to beat them is to shatter their core. That made the fight extra annoying, especially since there were a ton of them charging at him. But with his current skills and level, there was no way he wouldn't wreck them. After the fight, he was wiped out and figured the dwarf probably sent him here just cause he didn't want to mess with those pain-in-the-butt monsters himself. Still, there was one upside. Killing all those skeletons leveled him up to 100, which meant now he could change his class. His class would auto-select based on what he'd done before. With all that brawling lately, he was for sure gonna end up some kind of berserker or warrior. But the system pegged him as a cleric. Even so, he powered through and managed to gather the mithril, or the dwarf wanted. It was wild cause the dwarf didn't think Jinhyuk would make it out alive. He might have survived, but he was dead tired from all the battles he went through. Still, he didn't leave empty-handed. He snagged a bit of mithril ore for himself cause it looked pricey, and gave the rest to the dwarf. Since he got the ore, the dwarf agreed to use part of it to craft him whatever he wanted. He already had a badass weapon, so next up was armor tough enough to handle hard hits from monsters, preferably something light and easy to hide. The dwarf agreed and jumped right into work. The process took way longer than Jinhyuk was down to wait, so he bounced home to catch a nap for a few hours. He woke up hours later and headed back to the workshop to check on the dwarf. By then, the dwarf had already finished crafting the armor and looked pretty proud of it. It was a mithril chainmail that fit right under his t-shirt and hoodie. He tried it on, and without warning, the dwarf smacked him in the chest with a hammer. No better way to show off than with a demo, right? That hit would have normally busted his ribs, but thanks to the armor, he barely felt a thing. With armor that tough and his legendary baseball bat, his fighting skills leveled up big time. Meeting that dwarf was hands down the lucky break he needed to flip his whole life. But that wasn't all the dwarf had in store. He handed over a big barrel. It was the soju he brought earlier. Jinhyuk went back to his apartment and gave it a shot. The dwarf was right. Just storing the soju in a mithril barrel turned it into a whole different drink. Something that dope gave him a killer idea. He hits up the black market dealer again and offers a new deal. This time, he's selling kobold corpses and high-end liquor. Elsewhere in the city, the Titan Guild had just wrapped up training near some freshly opened gates. They should have been done, but a surprise wave of lizard men flooded through the gates. Looks like it was an anomaly gate, and 3 times as many enemies came out of the one they had already cleared. One of the guild members suggests calling in backup from another guild, but Doyen, the guild's vice leader, can't swallow his pride enough to ask for help. He pushed his squad to hold the line and fight. Jinhyuk, on the flip side, wasn't doing too bad. He just officially registered his class as a cleric and, on top of that, got bumped from rank D to rank C. Clerics are a rare healing class, and everybody knows top guilds are always on the lookout for him. That means now he might get recruited by a guild. Out of nowhere, a hunter stumbles in, all bloody and beat up, begging for a cleric. Jinhyuk raises his hand and steps up as a cleric. The dude takes him to where the Titan Guild members are holding the line against a swarm of lizard men. They tell him to hang in the back and heal as many folks as he can with the other clerics. Jinhyuk wants to help more, but the guild guy assures him all he needs to do is stay in back and keep him healed, and they'll hook him up with payment after the fight. Having the healers around was enough to give the guild members a second wind to keep going. But the waves were too much, and one of the other clerics suggests calling a backup guild to wipe them out faster. At this rate, they're all toast if they don't make a move. Just when he's thinking about what to do next, he feels a hostile vibe behind him. His bat just saved him from getting whacked fatally by one of the lizard dudes. Somehow, the dude slipped past all the hunters and was trying to wipe out the healers, starting with him. That means the back line of their defense got busted. Only clerics are chillin' in the rear. If these freaks bust through, they'll wipe the whole guild in a heartbeat. With no other choice, Jinhyuk grabs his bat and smacks the lizard dude that jumped him, sending him flying with one swing. He hollers at the other clerics that there's a breach, and he's the only one who can stop it. They got this far behind enemy lines thanks to some sneaky stealth trick, and now they're trying to pull a sneak attack from the rear. Jinhyuk tells the clerics to just focus on healing for now and let him handle the lizard dudes. It's gonna be rough, but he's the only one who can pull it off. The other clerics are freaking out about him, thinking he's just a regular OL healer like them. But Jinhyuk charges straight at him, telling the clerics not to sweat it. He wouldn't be saying all this if he didn't have at least a bit of faith in his skills. Of course, even after saying all that, he was still low-key nervous about the whole sitch. But in the end, he managed to hold it down against the wild-ass monsters. One of them slips past while his guard's down, and makes a beeline for one of the other clerics. Jinhyuk chases after him, jumps up, and stops him just in time before he could land a hit on the cleric. His rush move leaves him wide open for a stab from behind, but thanks to the dwarf's chainmail, it barely does squat. The monster's tripping that his attack didn't work, and Jinhyuk uses that window to smash his face in with the bat. Somehow, he's really holding them off solo. Thanks to him, the others can just keep healing without sweating surprise attacks. But that ain't the only thing going in their favor. The lizard dudes freeze up when a new brawler jumps into the brawl. Out of nowhere, a jack dude joins and one-shots one of the monsters. This new guy is Seo Sango, the guild master of Titan. He clocks Jinhyuk and asks if he's the one who mopped up all the monsters in the zone. The rank C hunter owns up to wiping the floor with the monsters, but he's more like, "Who the heck is this buff guy?" The clerics are shook he doesn't know S-rank Hunter Sango. Dude's so OP that with him in the mix, it looks like the battle's about to be over. Wasting no time, he books it to join his crew in the brawl, but not before promising to properly reward Jinhyuk later. It's crystal clear to anyone, even Jinhyuk, that S-rank hunters are on a whole other level. When he's around, he becomes the real beast of the battle. He drops right into the chaos, and his presence instantly hypes everyone up, except Doyen, who's salty the guild master showed up. Ain't nothing wrong with a fellow guild bro coming in clutch, but Doyen's pride won't let him chill about it. Sango takes charge of the scene right away. He dishes out orders to the hunters and gets everyone's attention on lock. Then, without waiting for the others to clear the area, he slams the ground with a heavy hit, making a shockwave that sends all the lizard dudes flying. That one blow was enough to take out a bunch of them in one go. In just a few minutes, with Sango backing them up, all the monsters get wiped. Now that he knows his guildmates are safe, he grabs Doyen by the collar to scold him. What the hell was he thinking, risking his life and his squad's lives just to solo the monsters? He claims he just wanted to keep the guild's name clean, but Sango knows dude was just trying to protect his fragile pride. The two of them stare each other down until one of the guildmates reminds him he's gotta dismiss the clerics who helped clean up the mess. The guild master chills out and steps up to thank the hunters in person, especially Jinhyuk, who's the main reason so many people made it out alive today. To show his thanks, he offers to let him join the guild on the spot. No sign-up hassle. That's a no-go for Doyen. He jumps in quick to trash Jinhyuk as just some lucky D-rank. Sango, though, doesn't hold back and reminds him this so-called XD rank saved a bunch of lives that would have been toast if not for his stubborn grind. Then he straight up makes Doyen apologize to Jinhyuk, which is a huge ego punch for the guild's deputy director. Even with all that, Jinhyuk turns down the offer, all polite like. He ain't about to join a guild that lets dudes like Doyen have any say. That's the last straw, and Doyen charges at him with a boosted punch, but a straight-up bat swing to the gut shuts him down cold. The hit knocks Doyen out on the spot. The moment's so wild it ends up in a news article the next day. The higher-ups at Titan Guild can't even deal with what happened to Doyen. Not only did he get wrecked in public by a plain OLC rank, he also lost his authority as deputy director. They demand the C rank show up and explain himself. Sango, on the flip side, ain't having it. Not only did Doyen risk multiple guild members' lives over his pride, he even tried to throw hands with someone who fought for the guild. That's more than enough reason to kick him out. That shuts everyone up real quick. Nobody's gotta come back. He tells the squad to bounce. The guild master's mind goes back to that badass C-rank hunter he saw the other day. Before he levels up even more, he's gotta get Kong Jinhyuk to join the guild, no matter what it takes. The man himself is laid out lazy on his apartment floor, sipping a drink while checking his spending. Since he made bank from hunting, he splurged a bit, racking up a stupid high expense tab. If he knew things would turn out like this, he might have taken the bonus Titan Guild offered. But end of the day, whatever, he's got a way better method to stack cash. After a well-earned break, he heads back into the dungeon to scoop up more monster corpses. Hunting the same old monsters just ain't cutting it anymore. Now that he's beefed up, he's looking for tougher fights. He pushes deeper than usual into the second floor and runs into a small squad of orcs. One tries to sneak up from behind, but he dodges clean and claps back with a hit of his own. The blow drops the orc instantly, just as a bunch more close in on him in the hallway. A few days ago, he'd have been toast, but thanks to his new gear, he mops them up easy. In the end, he tallies up 20 orc corpses, which should net him enough dough to chill for a whole year. Since he's still got plenty of stamina, he pushes a little deeper into the dungeon and ends up hitting the third floor, known as the Temple Guardian's Labyrinth. At first glance, there don't seem to be any monsters around, but the chill vibe gets wrecked almost instantly by a massive quake shaking the ground. A giant hand pops out from underneath it, and Jinhyuk barely manages to move in time. The hand belongs to a stone golem, which is an artificial monster built from mana. Its attacks come in way too fast for him to dodge, and they're so strong that even when he blocks, they blast him back a long way, leaving him with barely any choice but to just do his best and fight. The golem seems crazy strong, but it's dumb as a rock and doesn't know how to use all that power. Jinhyuk takes full advantage and lands a blow to its head, busting it up and making the thing drop. But it doesn't take long before it starts piecing itself back together again. Jinhyuk forgot a key detail about golems. You can only take them out by smashing their core all the way. Realizing this, he tries to fall back and make some space to catch his breath and think up a plan. But the monster grows its hand back fast enough to grab him before he can dip. There aren't many ways he could slip out of this trap, but out of nowhere, an arrow flies in and nails the golem right in the chest. Jinhyuk sees his chance and follows up with a quick swing of his bat, busting the golem's core and finishing it off once and for all. He made it out alive thanks to the rando who saved him with that clutch shot. He turns around to thank his savior, but gets shook seeing that instead of the dwarf he was expecting, there's a hot chick with weird ears. Those ears mean she's actually an elf. He gives a polite nod and thanks her for saving him, but doesn't notice the elf diving at him while his head's down. He's only got a second to see her before she grabs him by the neck and pulls him close to grill him. She hasn't seen him in these dungeons before and is all curious about who he is and where he came from. The elf clearly ain't from Jinhyuk's world. She has no clue where that is, and her outfit looks totally alien. She throws a bunch of questions at him, while he's struggling to break free from her grip. Finally, she lets him go after he mentions he entered the dungeon today. That means he knows where the dungeon entrance is. She shoves him to the ground and drops her bow. She's finally found a way out of this dungeon. Jinhyuk gets up and demands to know what the hell's with her over-the-top attitude. The elf blows him off and instead demands he take her to the exit. He's not too thrilled about getting bossed around out of nowhere. Still, she's crazy pretty, so he'll let it slide for now. She says if he leads her out of the dungeon safe, she'll totally hook him up with something nice. She's a platinum-ranked merc, after all, so he can trust her. Her name's Lucia and she's a half-elf who's real proud of being kinda famous. She's sure he's heard of her somewhere, but Jinhyuk has zero clue what she's talking about or who she even is. She repeats she's a platinum-ranked merc, and shows off her badge. But he's never seen or heard of that stuff before. Is he from some backwoods town or what? How's it even possible he doesn't know what the badge is or who she is? He tells her he's from South Korea. Now it's her turn to get confused about the names he's dropping and figures the crazy mage might have actually pulled off that dimensional jump spell. She breaks it down for him in plain words. A mage from her world cast a spell in this dungeon that made it hop over to his. Sounds nuts, but this really seems like what went down. But since it was a dimension hop, undoing the magic might let them get back to her world. Jinhyuk had felt something was off, and turns out this dungeon isn't even from his world. If this place returns to its original spot, that could spell big trouble for him. He asks if she's planning on sending the dungeon back now, but she can't. Undoing the magic here would be way too hard. Still, there's one spot that might work, a secret room on this floor she found a while ago when trying to find a way out. She asks for his help to reach it, and promises to pay him back for the favor. The deal doesn't sound half bad, so he agrees to help her get to the hidden room. They head out and fight a bunch of orcs on the way. Jinhyuk realizes she's way tougher than he thought. That arrow she shot earlier wasn't just luck. Going toe-to-toe with her here would be a terrible move. Best play is to team up and keep watching how things go. After trekking a bit more, they decide to chill in a safe spot. Jinhyuk had packed some emergency chocolate in his pockets, and gives her one to snack on. She digs it instantly and asks for more. After tearing through his whole stash, she begs for even more. Sadly, that was the last one, and she's cool with it, looking satisfied enough to keep going. Eventually, they reach a big-ass chamber housing the dungeon boss. Lucia figures there's a shot the mage's spell is in that room. To check it out, they'll have to beat the boss and take over the chamber. She tells him he doesn't gotta do much, just help her finish the thing off once she's worn it down. They open the door, and the monster immediately roars in rage before charging. Lucia loads up an arrow and aims dead at the boss's chest. She tells Jinhyuk to watch closely. Then she uses a skill called Aura to juice up her shot. She fires the arrow and it slams the boss hard, knocking it flat on its back. Just one shot was enough to drop it, even though it's a massive armored beast. That's the move she's gonna teach him. But first he needs to finish off the monster before it gets back up. Just like the golems, he's gotta go for the core to take it out. He jumps onto the fallen beast's chest and swings his bat right where he thinks the core should be. But one hit's not cutting it, and a huge fist swings at him from the side. He blocks it with one of his cleric skills, Holy Shield, then uses the momentum to launch himself back onto its chest. If one hit ain't enough to drop it, then he'll just keep swinging till it stops moving. Finally, he busts the core, and the beast is toast. He levels up again, getting real close to 200 now. With the beast down, he heads back to Lucia and asks her to teach him how to use Aura, but she tells him he already did. His shield skill turned his cleric holy power into Aura. To him, it was just a class skill, but she doesn't even know what that means. Also, if he can use moves like that, looks like he can learn Aura way faster than she thought, since he's got what it takes to handle it. That means he could even start buffing his attacks with Aura right away. But first, there's one condition. She sends him back to town to grab more chocolate for her. Back in the city, Sango walks with his secretary, Lee Hyena, and they talk about a new anomaly that popped up near Gangnam Station. It got detected yesterday, so they've got around 5 days to get ready before some major monster shows up there. No matter how Sango looks at it, there's no way his guild can take it down solo. However, all the other major guilds have been sent overseas, which means the Titan Guild is the only one left in Korea to fight. Hyena keeps looking for capable hunters who are working solo in the area, but none of them seem trustworthy. However, Sango already has his eye on someone else. In fact, by chance, that person was just crossing the street. He excuses himself from his convo with his secretary and chases after Jinhyuk. The dude's carrying a huge box of snacks the elf asked him to buy, when the guild master's voice grabs his attention. He shoots his shot again to get him to join the Titan Guild, but Jinhyuk ain't planning to change his mind. So Sango offers Jinhyuk a gig as a merc. That way, he can still work for the guild, but not be tied down to it. The rewards are pretty damn solid too. That sounds more tempting, but Jinhyuk just says he'll think about it. He heads back to the dungeon and drops off the snacks to the elf. She chows down on them and it's clear they don't have that kind of food in her world. After her feast, Jinhyuk asks why she's eating in the basement when they already beat the boss monster. She points to a magic circle on the ceiling and says it links the dungeon to the world she lives in. Because of that, she's staying there for now to study it. So if he wants to learn more about Aura, he's gonna need to bring her more chocolate. Now that she's full, she grabs his hand to teach him how to use Aura. First, she's gotta infuse her aura into his body to show him how it feels. Jinhyuk instantly feels the power surging inside him. Lucia also notices the spike in power in his body after she infuses him. He's got more talent for it than she expected. The holy power flowing through him is dope enough that she thinks he can master the basics before the day is over. She gives him props for his talent, and asks if he can remember the aura flow in his body. He's sure he can, and she gives him the nod, before turning to leave the dungeon. She was supposed to study the magic circle first, but it looks like it'll be faster to just fully train him in aura. The best way to do that is with some hands-on experience. She takes him to another part of the dungeon and throws him into a mob of monsters. He goes toe-to-toe with a whole army of goblins and kobolds, but manages to hold his own. While bagging their bodies, he turns to Lucia and asks why the hell he's fighting a monster mob when she said he'd be learning aura. She tells him this is how he's gonna learn aura. Even though she pumped a little mana into him to get a feel for it, he's gotta sense the rest on his own, and to do that, all he's gotta do is activate aura using his holy power, and there's no better way to gain that instinct than in real combat. He's more pissed she didn't say any of that, and just threw him in without warning. While they're fighting, the ground starts shaking and a stone golem bursts out of the dirt. It lets out a loud-ass roar and knocks Jinhyuk back as Lucia keeps explaining that he needs to hit a real crisis to unlock his potential. All he needs to do is focus and try to feel the holy power coming from the shield his skill creates. The shield's made from aura, so once he gets it down, he'll be able to handle it quick. That's easier said than done since he doesn't activate the holy shield on purpose. How's he supposed to feel aura from something that pops automatically? The monster brings down a massive fist on Jinhyuk, and he blocks with the holy shield again. But this time he feels something, a kind of energy clustering around his left hand, the one that triggers the skill. This must be what holy power feels like. The monster pulls back and strikes again, and Jinhyuk pulls out his holy shield again, except this time it looks different than before. The vibe of summoning the shield also hits different. This must be mana. The golem doesn't give him time to figure it out, and smashes the shield, launching Jinhyuk across the field. Lucia roasts him from her platform. She told him to master his skill, not to mess up like an idiot. But he was just doing what she said. As he gets ready for another hit, a status window pops up in front of him. He's unlocked a new skill called Holy Power Application. This skill lets him use holy power and channel it to buff his offense and defense depending on how much power he uses. This means there's ways to get new skills outside of a job change. Lucia sees he's spacing out and decides to jump in herself. Looks like going up against the golem while learning aura is a bit much for him, so she offers to step in. But Jinhyuk bounces back quick and tells her to hold up. Now that he's got the hang of his new powers, he can handle this. He charges at the golem and launches himself off the ground, barely dodging another stone fist flying his way. Mid-air, he channels mana into his bat and pulls a flip to gain extra momentum before slamming the mana-amped bat into the golem's head. The monster crashes, but he ain't done yet. He lands on its chest and focuses again, trying to dump even more mana into his bat before driving it into the golem's chest, unlocking a new skill called Holy Aura. With his upgraded weapon, he stabs the golem with the bat and cracks the core. By unlocking Holy Aura, he also scores new skills like Precise Strike and Unbreakable. Thanks to Lucia's training, he unlocked 2 passive skills and 1 active one. But she's more shocked at how fast he picked up aura during combat. She was just planning to show him the basics and call it a day, but now, she's gotta stick around till the end. She grabs an arrow and knocks down a wall, opening the area to an even bigger monster mob. Jinhyuk's not impressed, but he grips his bat and gets ready for round 2. Fighting monsters in the dungeon drains the hell out of him, and when he goes to sell the monster corpses, he's wiped out. He's so damn tired that the black market boss, Jinhyuk, notices it right away when they meet. He looks like he just crawled out of a war zone. Jinhyuk decides not to ask too many questions and gets to work processing the monster corpses. He also brings up the booze he sold them last time. He pitched it as handcrafted traditional soju, and ever since it dropped, orders have been blowing up cause the drink's gone viral. He could just focus on slinging liquor and never stress about cash again. With enough money to live easy and a small biz already rolling, Jinhyuk heads home to crash. The training with Lucia has him totally drained, and just seconds after hitting the bed, he knocks out cold. Doesn't take long till he's woken up by a disaster alert. A loud automated voice tells everyone on the street to evacuate and get to safety. Today's already the day of the monster invasion. Looks like it came early this month. Monster invasions usually happen randomly, but there's one kind that drops after a fixed 1-month period. That invasion's pretty routine, and normally Jinhyuk would use this chance to bag some low-level monsters for quick cash. But this time he's way too wiped to care. The big guilds will take care of it anyway, so he figured he wouldn't lift a finger. At least, that was the plan, until he got a notification on his phone saying that, because of how urgent this invasion is, monster bounties are triple. With triple the reward on the table, Jinhyuk can't ignore it anymore. He hits the streets to see if he can drop a few and rake in some dough. Meanwhile, the security officials guide people, and try to clear the streets while the Titan Guild fights off hordes of monsters running through the city. The security line is already breaking due to the number of monsters trying to push through, and Sango is running out of stamina to keep fighting. Doesn't matter how many he knocks down, more just keep popping up. The guild members are already maxed out, and, even though it looks like they've got the upper hand, things ain't looking too good. The guild secretary watches the fight all worry from a safe spot. Even though it seems like things are going okay thanks to the guild master, she can tell they're stretched way too thin. If only they had one more badass hunter to flip the situation. Her mind drifts to a guy the guild master had thought was promising not long ago. She grabs her phone and calls Jinhyuk. He's in the middle of throwing hands with some goblins when he picks up. She offers him a shot to fight with the Titan Guild and, in return, he'll get paid big time. He asks for 5 times the usual pay, and she suggests meeting up at a set spot to talk it out. When they meet, she offers him 4 times the pay instead, and he grudgingly agrees. With that, she hands him a device that'll track how many monsters he kills so they can keep tabs on what he's done for the guild. If he pulls above average weight in the fight, then he'll get everything he asked for. Now that he's got the shot to show off his skills and get paid right, he heads into the fight to help out. Hyena watches him leave, kinda hesitant, wondering if he'll live up to the hype Sango has for him. He once took down Doyen by pure dumb luck, but no one really knows what he's capable of yet. He hits the battlefield and goes straight for a raging ogre, which shocks the whole crowd. He kills it in one clean hit, making everyone think he's gotta be at least an A-rank hunter. The rank's close, but Jinhyuk thinks with his current skills he's stronger than an A-rank. He takes a sec to chug a mana potion and get his energy back. Thanks to Lucia's insane training, he's hit level 200. Normally he couldn't take on an ogre, but as long as his mana holds out, he should be able to keep up with an S-rank hunter. Right now he's got over 1,500 mana potions, which means all the monsters around him are basically cash cows. Elsewhere, Doyen's dropping monsters with his guildmates. He notices the monsters are thinning out fast, and turns to see a crowd watching someone slice through monsters like butter. He walks up and sees the one dude he hates more than anyone right now. He yells orders at the stunned hunters, telling them to quit daydreaming and get back to smashing monsters. Why the hell was this guy here and who the hell invited him? Just seeing Jinhyuk reminds him of their last run-in, and how his cringe moment got blasted all over the news. Last time had to be dumb luck. This time, since he's solo, there shouldn't be a problem crushing him and putting him in check. With that in mind, he charges Jinhyuk, hoping to fix his bad habit of showing up in the worst place at the worst time. Too bad for him, the C-rank hunter notices him right away and counters the attack, sending Doyen flying and knocking him out again. He's way too busy to deal with this random clown. Meanwhile, Sango's going head-to-head with a raging Minotaur. His mana's almost gone, and he's totally drained. The Minotaur raises its hammer to strike just as Sango considers bailing to recharge. But before it can land the hit, a voice calls out from behind, and Jinhyuk jumps down from above, grabs the Minotaur by the horn, and slams it into the ground. For a C-rank hunter to drop a Minotaur with one shot ain't exactly easy. Looks like his judgment about Jinhyuk was spot on. After dropping the beast, Sango walks over to show some thanks for the assist. Jinhyuk tells him the guild master gave him a ring and promised good money for his help, so no need for thank yous. Sango takes the chance to ask once again if he'll join their guild. If they team up, gigs like this will keep rolling in. Jinhyuk takes a sec to think it over, then tells him once they're done clearing the rest of the monsters, he'll think about it. While they're talking, Sango gets a call from Hyena. She tells him to look up at the sky. The clouds had gone dark and the weather turned straight up savage, with lightning strikes. Something huge and nasty was lurking in the clouds and didn't look friendly at all. It was throwing lightning at everything in sight, monsters and hunters alike, and wrecking buildings as it flew. It was so high up in the sky there was no way their skills could even reach it, which meant there was no way to fight back. Sango suggests heading back to their guild to figure things out, and invites Jinhyuk to roll with him. Jinhyuk agrees with a sigh and they both head back to the office. From there, they run a bunch of tests and see that nothing they've tried so far has worked against it or blocked its attacks. Everything they've done to stop it has been shut down or blown to bits. They need to find something packing serious firepower that can also hit from a distance. Lucia pops into his head right away and he realizes there might still be a shot at taking it down. While Jinhyuk heads out to find Lucia, the Titan Guild execs get together to talk about the favoritism Sango's showing toward a C-rank hunter. The other guild members try to come up with other ways to bring the monster down without counting on Jinhyuk, but there's just no other option. All the other ideas are guaranteed fails, so the only thing left is to bank on the one hunter with a plan. They could call up another guild named Geishia, a big-name crew full of A-rank hunters and top-tier mages. But those guys don't give a damn about the body count, and calling them in would for sure mean a ton of deaths. The rest of the room goes silent, realizing they really don't have another play except to wait it out. Back at the apartment, Jinhyuk steps out of the portal with Lucia. He thanks her for agreeing to help and promises her all the treats from his world she wants as a reward. Together, they head to the top of Titan Guild HQ, and Jinhyuk shows her the monster that's been tearing up the city. He asks if she can take it down, and she's confident she can. The thing's so massive she could hit it with her eyes closed. The monster's level 300, which is the highest level ever recorded. She tells him she can totally nuke it, but first she's gonna need a little backup. The building's roof is way too flimsy to handle his power, and he needs him to prep a shield to soak up most of the impact if he doesn't want to see a bunch of buildings wrecked. With things all set, Jinhyu calls up the guild leader and asks about the potential damage to the area once they take down the monster. Damage to the buildings is a done deal. Sango tells him not to sweat it, and just focus on taking the monster out. With that settled, Jinhyu whips up a shield while Lucia loads up 2 arrows to finish off the beast. She lines up the shot carefully and then lets them fly, causing a massive shockwave that blasts Jinhyu backwards. Even with the shield, the 2 shots rip through the sky toward the monster, and, in just a sec, land a direct hit on the beast, dropping it in one blow. The damage is so insane that half its body straight up disintegrates from the hit. The Titan Guild watches from the ground, stunned that he pulled it off that easy. Hunter Kong Jinhyu keeps blowing people's minds. Lucia's attack packed enough punch to leave scorch marks on the rooftop. It might not have been the time to hold back, but that was a lot. Lucia, on the flip side, is more bummed that the monster was that weak. That wasn't it at all. It's just that Lucia's too damn strong for any monster popping up in this world. Either way, job's done and it's time for her to bounce. She hands over the tracker that logs her points, and the reading was a massive 240 points. With that, she turns to dip out, but not without dropping a warning. He shouldn't trust others too much when there's a lot on the line. People's minds get foggy with money dreams. Better not let himself get played, like she has on plenty of her adventures. Jinhyu tells her he'll be straight. If anything sketchy pops up, he'll deal with it. They say their goodbyes and Jinhyu heads down to the street, where Sango and his secretary find him. They catch up and ask how the hell he soloed such a massive monster. He politely brushes it off and says it's classified. One of the execs with them gets salty about it, and doesn't buy that some C-rank scrub could take down a beast that huge. But Jinhyu shows them the monster's tracker, which has a fat amount of points, proving it really was him. Sango cuts in and apologizes to Jinhyu for the explosion. The exec watches them, pissed. Looks like Sango's more down with the C-rank than his own guild peeps. In that case, time for a switch up, cause Sango keeps getting in the way of the guild's future. He pulls out his phone and dials some unknown number. Next day, word had spread all over town that some ordinary C-rank hunter dropped the giant monster. The Titan Guild members ain't buying it, but it ain't hard to fact-check. People even heard the guild master personally offered him a direct invite to Titan Guild, but he turned it down. Dude must be real confident in his skills to shoot down a fat offer from Sango himself. The rumors even hit Ultron Guild members, who also heard that Doyen got hospitalized after the monster invasion events. He was known for his dope skills, but the word is he got clapped by that now famous C-rank hunter. If that's real, then maybe the rumors got some weight. Ultron Guild scouts decide to meet up with Jinhyu themselves and confirm it. Maybe he unlocked a hidden class, which is hella rare for hunters. If that's the case, they gotta recruit him before another guild grabs him, or worse, takes him out. Jinhyu, meanwhile, slept like a log after the fight. Dude burned all his energy and passed out as soon as he could. He woke up after 2 full days of deep sleep and realized it was from draining himself dry. He heads to the living room and sees Lucia made a total mess with all the snacks he bought her. She somehow ate it all in just 2 days. She had no other choice, since the fridge was empty and all she had were those snacks. She couldn't go back to the dungeon either, cause he hadn't opened the portal for her. That throws Jinhyu off, since he never had to open it before. It's always just been there, far as he knows. He goes up to the attic to show her the portal was open even now. That made 0 sense to her, cause just a sec ago, there was nothing there. He tells her to step away from the door, and then opens it again, and sure enough, it's gone. Now that she's moved, Jinhyuk's got no clue what's going on, since he's only ever seen the dungeon open. Lucia's got a theory. The dungeon reacts only to him, which means wherever he goes, the dungeon follows. Looks like the dungeon's straight up imprinted on him, meaning there's a chance the dungeon could have dropped right on his head. Thankfully, it was a botched spell. He decides not to overthink it, and instead orders food for both of them. She wonders how he even made it back home after they beat the monster. She had cast a recognition suppression spell, which should have made it impossible to find. Jinhyuk asks why she'd do that in his house. She explains that while he was out cold, some weirdos kept showing up. They were from a guild called Ultron and Guardian, and they were so damn annoying she made sure they couldn't ever show up again. Jinhyuk's confused why those big guilds would be looking for him, so he pulls out his phone to check what went down while he was out. The first headline he sees grabs him right away. News that he took down the new giant monster had gone viral. There was even a video making rounds showing him fighting alongside Titan Guild clear as day. Looks like he got famous overnight. This might be a problem. Maybe he got too greedy and leeching off Lucia's power put him in the spotlight. The hunter game is real cutthroat, and anytime they see a strong rival, they try to wipe him out fast. He decides not to dwell on the past. With Lucia all good, they head back to the dungeon to drop off their loot to the dwarf. Thanks to Lucia's OP attack, the body was too wrecked to use and they could only grab the head. The old man's pissed at the elf for going overboard and ruining good materials. Looks like he and Lucia got some built-in beef. Jinhyuk steps in during the argument, and asks the dwarf if he can make something from the corpse. The dwarf pauses and pulls something from the head. It's the organ that let it shoot lightning. With that, he can enchant the baseball bat to shoot lightning too. Jinhyuk asks how he wants to get paid, but all the dwarf wants is the elf out of his workshop. Lucia starts shaking with rage and Jinhyuk has to chill her out by promising more candy. After stopping her just in time from blasting the dwarf's head off, they head back to the city to get her those promised snacks. On the way back home, he senses something in an alley. Someone's tailing him. He stashes his groceries behind a wall and calls out the stalker. A voice answers, surprised Jinhyuk even noticed them. Suddenly, a figure pops out of nowhere and charges at him with a sword swing. Jinhyuk barely manages to block the hit with his bat. The newcomers shook that Jinhyuk could even see him. That pretty much proves the rumors were true. Jinhyuk really is more than just some rank C scrub. Jinhyuk shoves him back and then jumps in with another swing of his bat. Since he doesn't want to blow his cover, he's gonna have to beat the guy till he feels like talking. Since the attacker can't throw hands head on, he uses a skill to turn invisible again, switching up the strategy. Jinhyuk can kinda sense his presence, but can't actually see him. That slight feeling is enough to clue him in when the guy's about to strike. Still, he dodges and blocks most of the attacks thrown his way, but at this pace, it's not looking good for him for much longer. If he had his regular bat, he could track him easier, but the old dwarf's working on it, so he had to swap to a plain OL aluminum one. He can't just hang around there for much longer. With no other way to fight back, Jinhyuk decides to bail, but not before the hooded attacker slaps a tracking device on his shirt. Jinhyuk heads to a busy area to lay low, but the guy's tracker still lets him keep tabs on wherever he goes. The trail leads to a bathroom in a mall, and he follows, staying low-key on the way. He stops in front of the stall the tracker led him to and kicks it open, ready to throw down, only to find nothing there, just the tracker stuck to the wall. It was a setup. He realizes that a second too late, as Jinhyuk charges him from behind with his bat up. In this tight space, vanishing ain't gonna save him. He barely ducks the hit, and counters with a knife slash at Jinhyuk's face, which gets dodged easy. The hunter grabs the guy's hand before slamming him to the floor. Nowhere to run and all the wind knocked out of him, Jinhyuk raises his bat, gets ready to strike one last time, and is set to smash his skull in if he doesn't spill who sent him on this chase. Meanwhile, outside, a kid wants to use the bathroom. There's a sign saying not to enter, but he just can't hold it anymore. His dad, annoyed, lets him run in just as the assassin's about to confess. That's all the opening he needs. The assassin charges up a fireball and hurls it straight at Jinhyuk and the kid, forcing him to throw up a shield to save them both. The assassin uses the smoke to dip while he still can. The higher-ups only told him to get intel. He didn't think it'd get this messy. While trying to escape, an object blasts through his chest, killing him on the spot. Jinhyuk stays behind, trying to catch his breath. Looks like he used too much power and offed him by accident. While he's feeling bad about it, a status window pops up in front of him. It registers the kill but marks it as self-defense. Because of that, he won't get slapped with the villain trait and instead, a hidden job change just became available. Not long after the incident, the cops roll up to lock down the area. Jinhyuk sits quietly on a bench, thinking about what just went down. Normally, when a hunter offs someone, they get the villain title. Clerics especially get nerfed since their powers get sealed if they pick that up. He figured that's what was gonna happen to him. But since it was self-defense, he dodged that bullet. Still, he definitely didn't expect a class change of all things. Two detectives walk up while he's mulling it over. They ask him stuff about what happened and he does his best to help out. Lucky for him, since he didn't get the villain trait, they don't suspect him of being shady. He confirms it was all self-defense, and they decide to let him go. But before he dips, they tell him he can't spill the beans to anyone about the whole villain title thing. It could cause problems for them later if the wrong folks find out you can kill without instant punishment. To cover that, they hand him a device that'll monitor him and flag him if he says anything related to the case. like murder, self-defense, or villain. With that, they cut him loose and say to leave the cleanup to them. Since this must have been a real hit to his system, they tell him to go home and get some rest. On the way out, the detectives chat between themselves. There's no freaking way Jin-hyuk is just a rank C hunter. He blocked a serious hit from a mage while protecting a kid. Plus, he bagged and killed a high-level hunter. At this point, it ain't just a rumor. They just hope he doesn't pull anything to lose their trust. Jin-hyuk heads home and checks out his new class. It's called the Inquisitor class, and it seems to build off his cleric powers. The skills he unlocked are more focused on himself than the usual ones. They let him fight and tank while keeping himself healed up constantly. It also gives him crazy resistance to stuff like stun and poison effects. With buffs like that, he becomes an even more badass solo hunter. Another thing is he now has the ability to see other folks' karma and gets power boosts based on how high someone's karma is, thanks to the judgment skill. It's like this class is straight up pushing him to take down villains. Now that he's seen what the class can do, he heads back to the dwarf's workshop to check out his new weapon. Like he promised, the weapon's enchanted to fire off lightning attacks. All he's gotta do is think about it, and he can shoot up to 3 charged lightning blasts. But each charge takes about 30 minutes to recharge. Lucia's less hyped about that and more focused on the fact that she can't feel Jin-hyuk's holy power anymore. He must have done something in the human world that changed his status. He tells them he can't say anything since he's got a device that tracks what he says. The dwarf offers to get rid of the device if he does him a simple favor. He hands Jin-hyuk a compass that's supposed to lead him to some dangerous spot to grab an item. Lucia asked the dwarf if he was serious, if he really planned to send him there. The dwarf said even a dumb rookie could handle it, and that Jin-hyuk volunteered for it, didn't he? Jin-hyuk was shocked and asked if they were actually sending him somewhere dangerous. But what kind of place was it? After a bit, Jin-hyuk started rappelling down a cliff with a rope. He asked why they were even mining there. Lucia asked what he was scared of. It was just a cliff, nothing crazy. Then she started swinging the rope. The guy yelled at her to knock it off. Lucia told him to just follow her and catch up. She dropped down quick. Jin-hyuk said that was easy for her to say, but he was heavier than her, after all. Lucia asked if that was really the case, or if he was just chicken. In her view, they weren't doing anything out of the ordinary. Jin-hyuk thought about what she said and figured maybe she was right, but he didn't care, so he let go of the rope and jumped off the cliff. Lucia told him he nailed it, and asked if he really lost his holy power. Jin-hyuk said yeah, that's why he brought that device. Lucia asked if she could take it off. The guy said usually not, but the old man said it was chill, so there was probably a way to help. He's got some real talent, so it could totally be trusted to him. Lucia said he was solid like that, with sensing karma and all, which explained why she'd been giving them that weird look. She asked what his karma level was. Jin-hyuk said it was 82, the highest out of the 3. Lucia said he hadn't had an easy ride, so it made sense. Dude had to survive. Jin-hyuk said the gap between them was only like 20 points. Lucia said they didn't even know yet if 20 points was a lot or nah. In her world, sometimes saints could tell good from bad just by looking at you. Jin-hyuk said he was nowhere near being a saint. Lucia asked who the hell would call him a saint. She just said that kinda skill existed in her world too. Either way, now wasn't the time to go mine hunting. They needed to figure out their powers first. Jin-hyuk asked why she was so into his powers. Lucia said it was cause she found him interesting. They wouldn't learn jack about karma levels just sitting there, and they had to bounce. If he was worried about getting jumped, she'd watch his back. Jin-hyuk thought about what to do. Old man, sorry, but I gotta take care of this, Jin-hyuk thought. Then he said she was right, they had to dip, and right away he pulled the return stone from his pocket. Jin-hyuk smashed it with confidence, and said they had to take care of this mess first. Right then, a portal opened up. Once they were in the city, Jin-hyuk asked the girl if she was sure her disguise was doing its job. Lucia turned into a total hottie, and said she was sure she cloaked them both, so no stress. Jin-hyuk asked why everyone was still staring then. Lucia said she just couldn't hide that beauty, no matter how hard she tried. Jin-hyuk said that wasn't the point, though maybe the looks did play a part. Lucia told him to quit the BS and focus on what they'd figured out about karma. Jin-hyuk said karma seemed to stack up when you did shady stuff. Breaking a promise to the dwarf boosted karma level, but hurting someone in a fair fight didn't change it. It wasn't exactly clear what was considered high or low, but one thing was for sure. If your karma went over 200 points, you were tagged as a villain. Lucia asked why that was. Jin-hyuk said offing someone with 200 karma didn't give any penalty. Guess it counted as self-defense. The girl asked if 200 was the cap, right? Even she and the old man didn't have over 100 karma, so finding someone above 200 was hella rare. Jin-hyuk said she was right, he hadn't seen anyone above 50 out there. Then he told the girl to get up, they were gonna scout somewhere else, someplace full of bad dudes. Lucia asked if they really walked around at night with lanterns. Weren't they scared of drawing in monsters? Jin-hyuk said unlike her world, monsters didn't roam around here like that. Lucia said the air was kinda trash though, and Jin-hyuk replied that every world had its ups and downs. But suddenly, a guy rolled up and said Lucia was fine as hell. The dude said his bar had a deal going. Hot girls got up to 5 free cocktails. Lucia shut him down real quick and told him to bounce. Jin-hyuk stopped her and said it was free, maybe they could grab a drink. The guy got hyped and said he'd treat them like VIPs, told them to come with. Jin-hyuk got real happy, cause he'd found the scumbag, and the dude had 300 karma. Chilling at the bar, Lucia said booze in that world was kinda sweet. The guy got stoked, cause they just drunk poison. 1 drop paralyzes your whole damn body. Then he gave a signal, and the dude said they'd take care of him now. Jin-hyuk shot back right away, told them to bring it. He used his status-resistant skill to cancel out the poison, then clocked one of them. Lucia opened her eyes and said she was just faking being knocked out, but actually fell asleep. She turned over and asked who the hell those dudes were. Jin-hyuk asked what she thought. They were just a bunch of thugs. The guy told his goons to handle it, but one big dude told Jin-hyuk playtime was over, and swung at them both. Lucia asked if he needed backup, but Jin-hyuk confidently said nah, he had it. The guy called Jin-hyuk a bastard and asked why he was being ignored, but Jin-hyuk caught the punch with one hand. The dude was shook for a sec, like what the hell, why couldn't he move his arm? He asked Jin-hyuk if he was a hunter. Jin-hyuk said he might look like one, but for some reason was playing at being a bandit. The dude started freaking out, wondering what the hell he was doing there. Too bad, should have bounced. But Jin-hyuk held onto his hand tight and started squeezing it real slow. Then he smacked him upside the head hard, twisting his face up. The bar manager was stunned, couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. Jin-hyuk didn't let go and grabbed him by the collar, said he had a lot of questions. The guy screamed to let him go, but Jin-hyuk said nope, not happening. Then he beat the crap out of him till he was barely conscious, and told him this wasn't his first time, so spill who was protecting him. The dude slowly asked what Jin-hyuk was talking about. Jin-hyuk called him trash and asked again why he was walking around untouched. How'd he hire all these goons? No way he did that without backup. This was his final shot. The guy said there was nobody, he was telling the truth. Jin-hyuk saw he was denying it, either cause he was loyal as hell, or he was more scared of his bosses than a beatdown. Jin-hyuk yanked off his boot and figured he'd have to go harder. The guy tried to fight back and asked what he was doing. Jin-hyuk asked what he thought he was doing, just helping him talk. The dude asked if Jin-hyuk really thought that'd make him talk. Jin-hyuk said they'd see soon enough. But then Lucia walked up and asked why the guy was making it so hard on himself, told him to move aside. She decided to use her magic. The dude freaked out and asked what the hell was happening. Was she from Ultron? Jin-hyuk said he didn't look too hot. What did she do to him? Lucia said she just helped him fess up, didn't expect him to talk like that though. The dude said it didn't matter if she was from Ultron or wherever, none of it mattered anymore. The Titan Guild was gonna end it all. Jin-hyuk thought about that and figured Titan Guild was behind everything. He said even if war broke out, both sides were evenly matched. What made them think they'd win in a slaughter? The guy said it was the Elan elixir. Jin-hyuk was shocked and asked what that was. Going up the stairs, Lucia said stuff was getting real, and he said yeah. Who would have thought they'd run into a high-tier guild like this? Jin-hyuk explained the Elan elixir was a potion that doubled all stats, but needed a crapload of young girls to be sacrificed. He didn't think Titan Guild was into making that kinda stuff. Lucia said that was wild, she didn't expect to find some psycho trying to bring that potion back. Jin-hyuk asked if they had the elixir in her world too. Lucia said yeah, in her world it was called the Queen's Tears. Her childhood friend was sacrificed to make it, and when she hit platinum rank, she wiped out that whole group by herself. Jin-hyuk said that's why she looked so down. Lucia asked what they were gonna do. Jin-hyuk said if the elixir was close to being done, they had to smash it before that happened. At that moment, in a room outside the city, a suspicious man called his boss and told him they had a problem. The boss asked what the problem was. The stranger replied that Park Min-jae was dead. It didn't seem like an internal conflict nor the work of another guild, but it was strange they only killed him and left right away. His people or other guilds wouldn't do that. The boss said to find those responsible anyway. The man assured him everything would be done. During the Titan Guild's overseas business trip, Lee told the group leader that the results of this trip to Hong Kong were exclusive. Lee said that if the first half's performance kept up like this, it could be something positive, and mentioned the idea of recruiting 15% more members for the guild. Lee asked the master if something was wrong, since he didn't seem well. Sango asked if he had ever heard about the Elan elixir. Lee replied no, it was the first time he heard of it. Sango explained it was normal, since the association was doing everything to cover it up, and he was just asking out of curiosity. However, now it was hard for him to return to Korea, right? Lee answered it was complicated because the investigation wasn't over yet. But what exactly was happening? Sango asked if he could issue an urgent order for the guild to act immediately. He said the Titan Guild was now declaring hostile relations with the Tyrant Guild. Lee was surprised and asked what he meant. Sango replied that if they didn't prepare now, they'd fall into more chaos. Sango said if the info was true, when things started happening, it'd be too late. Lee asked what info was so serious to make him take such dangerous decisions. Lee told the leader he knew as well as anyone that order was practically a declaration of war against the Tyrant Guild. Sango said he was aware, but he shouldn't worry. The Ultron Guild and the government would be on their side. Lee said even war carried big risks, and they should at least consult their superiors and make a more cautious decision. Did he think he was talking nonsense? Sango thought for a moment, and saw on his face he had already made a decision. Normally he was very cautious, but still came to that conclusion. However, no matter how much he analyzed it, the decision still seemed too much. Sango said he totally understood. Lee was surprised. For now, he told him to announce it privately inside the guild and to the preparatory investigators, but hold off on the official announcement as far as the investigation was concerned. On the other hand, Lucia asked the guy if he had received any answer from the trustee. Jin-hyuk replied yes, they would contact him again as soon as the investigation team was ready. Lucia said at least there were still sane people out there. Jin-hyuk said if nobody agreed, he would handle it personally, and if they already knew what Elan was, that reaction was expected. By the way, wasn't he going to return? Lucia asked if he thought she would go back to the dungeon and miss all this fun. Jin-hyuk said if they were crazy enough to do something like that, then they weren't ordinary people. Lucia asked if he couldn't handle them alone, right? Jin-hyuk said that was true. Lucia said then he should let her help and suggested they wipe out those bastards together. Jin-hyuk thought for a moment and thanked her for the help, but suddenly someone knocked on the door asking if Kang Jin-hyuk was there. Lucia asked who it was, and Jin-hyuk himself replied he wasn't expecting anyone. At the door, they said it was a delivery guy. Could they open the door? The guy looked at his sensor and said the dude covered in Park Min-jae's blood wasn't far from there. He thought about it and realized the house was just his imagination, or the house looked a little blurry. Upon arriving, he remembered something and wondered, wasn't this the home of a hunter who caught a new kind of monster? But did that mean that person was the one who attacked the scene? But it didn't matter anymore, he would just catch him and ask. Jin-hyuk went to the door and asked the stranger who he was. The guy answered from behind the door that he was a delivery guy. Jin-hyuk immediately thought, and realized there was no way a delivery would come at this hour. Besides, the recognition suppression spell was still active in the house, and if someone had overcome it, and was pretending to be a delivery guy, it had to be a trap. The guy attacked Jin-hyuk right away with darts, but Jin-hyuk was stronger and dodged it. Jin-hyuk said he already knew and asked if deliveries now came with poison darts as a bonus. The guy was very surprised and couldn't believe this hunter had blocked his attack. At that point, Lucia had already loaded her bow and yelled at Jin-hyuk to get out of the target's way while releasing the arrow. The arrow went straight to the guy who attacked them. Lucia told Jin-hyuk to move aside, she would finish him herself. Jin-hyuk said no, he would handle it alone since he was there for what happened at the bar. Lucia warned him to be careful. The fact he kept moving after being hit by her arrow meant he wasn't just any guy. The guy looked at them and thought, what kind of woman is this? One arrow was enough to hurt him, and now he had to retreat. Jin-hyuk went after him and asked what was going on. Was he running away? Lucia asked if they were going to chase him. Jin-hyuk said leave him alone, he'd probably come back later, and anyway he was already there. Jin-hyuk said the karma of this guy was over 900, meaning he was the type who kills like nothing. Jin-hyuk told the girl everything had worked perfectly, wondered how to clean up after this, and maybe he could use this guy. The next morning, Lucia and he left the city by car, and suddenly the driver told them they had arrived, and that was the investigation scene. The driver added that even if the guild leader had instructed it, they had to be careful. There were still many people in the Titan Guild who didn't like him, so a lot of attention was needed. Jin Hyuk immediately looked at the people present, and saw half seemed to be A-rank hunters or higher. They were an elite group. Suddenly, Jin Hyuk noticed a guy and wondered if he was the same one who fought before. Could he be in charge of this operation? He immediately sighed and felt a bad feeling. This was gonna mess him up. The executive introduced himself formally as the operation leader. To Jin Hyuk's surprise, the bastard mentioned they met during the last air raid. The young man commented on the executive's personality change, who today seemed much kinder and gentler compared to before. Yeon-suk cleared his throat and awkwardly apologized for his behavior on that occasion, saying he got too excited in his effort for the guild. He wanted to take this chance to apologize for their first meeting, hoping it wouldn't affect today's operation. Yeon-suk also asked who the woman Jin Hyuk brought was. The young man introduced her as Lucia, a skilled colleague who wouldn't be a hindrance to the mission. No other additional staff was mentioned, which made the executive a bit nervous, but before he could protest, the reconnaissance team they had sent returned. Yeon-suk excused himself for a moment to hear the scouts report. Sure, the bastard might have apologized superficially, but he still looked at Jin Hyuk and Lucia with contempt, thinking they were just C-rank rookies. No matter how strong they were, after all, this Four Eyes bastard had his own agenda in this mission. Lucia immediately caught the executive's deceitful nature and asked Jin Hyuk if they should let the guy lead. He reassured her they'd be fine. More importantly, someone had been following them since before. Both Lucia and Jin Hyuk had already noticed their not-so-covert stalker for a while. The young man chose to leave him alone, since they could use him later. Before the raid started, Jin Hyuk handed Lucia a shiny magic crystal, a communication item that allowed contact with anyone within a 10 kilometers radius. They'd need it later, so better to have it handy. Yeon-suk came back with confirmation of the initial reports. From what they'd gathered, it was clear the Tyrant Guild was involved in human trafficking. As for the attack plan, the exec wanted to ask Jin Hyuk a favor. After scouting, the recon team found there was a strong barrier around the building. They also believed only one person could get through that barrier undetected. Yeon-suk insisted there was nobody better suited to sneak past the barrier than Jin Hyuk. The kid called it what it really was, a request to walk straight into death behind enemy lines. The exec kept playing the role of a neutral team leader, even sarcastically saying only the man who'd taken down the Leviathan could pull off this stealth mission. Plus, instead of moving with the Titan Guild members, whom he'd never worked with before, it'd be way easier for him to work solo. Yeon-suk was clearly putting all the risk on Jin Hyuk's shoulders. They might think they were getting the upper hand on Jin Hyuk, but this was exactly the situation he was hoping for. So Jin Hyuk joined a select team of hunters from the Titan Guild, and infiltrated the part of the barrier they could breach. The plan was simple. The magic team would make a small gap in the barrier, and Jin Hyuk had to slip through fast. They reached the east facade of the facility and picked up the pace. This lame magic team could only keep the gap open a few seconds, so Jin Hyuk needed to move quick and run full speed. Without wasting a second, they started working on the barrier to give the kid a small entry point. Jin Hyuk didn't care they were playing him and deliberately handing him over to the enemies. He was just curious about what the Tyrant Guild was hiding in those mountains. As soon as the gap was made, he ran inside the barrier and excitedly scoped the complex. Jin Hyuk stopped and summoned his trusty bat, only to see a strange vision right in front of him. The inside of the base looked totally different from the outside. The protective barrier must have had a distortion effect. First thing was finding the entrance to this huge base camp. After a few minutes of walking with no action, it felt weird that there were fewer guards than expected. The first guard he saw was near the barrier, apparently watching an entrance. If there was a guard, something had to be protected. This was the most promising clue Jin Hyuk had found so far. He lifted off the ground and raised his bat, charging it with his monstrous strength. Jin Hyuk swung his bat, and to his surprise the guard there turned to smoke when hitting the ground. It turned out to be an illusion, not a real person. He thought he could knock out a guard to capture and interrogate, but now it was up to Jin Hyuk to figure it out. Surprisingly, this supposedly secure facility had automatic doors like a damn supermarket. Defenses were ridiculously lax and it didn't even seem like they had security cameras installed. They must have thought the women they'd kidnapped had no chance to escape. To make sure he wasn't fooled, Jin Hyuk brought an insurance policy. He pulled out an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, generator made from electric-type monster materials and casually dropped it on the ground. With this, any communication or security device nearby would be disabled. That's why he left the magic communication crystal with Lucia. As soon as the EMP kicked in, Jin-hyuk planned his next moves. With the whole complex offline, it was time to start his real mission. In the distance, a masked man kept a close watch on Jin-hyuk. He was starting to piece together the kid's involvement in the bar accident and the Titan Guild. Like everyone else, the masked man also seemed to have his own hidden agenda, and Jin-hyuk played a crucial role for everything to go as planned. Because of the EMP Jin-hyuk activated, one of the lazy guards in the complex saw his game interrupted. When his phone died, the guard blamed the field's distance for cutting off his playtime. But when he finally sensed something was wrong, a red bat was already smashing the side of his face mercilessly. Jin-hyuk didn't even swing it. He just threw his weapon, which stabbed the guy with the blunt tip of the baseball bat. After making sure the guard was down, he auto-retrieved his bat. He finally found some flesh and blood to hit. The guard's blood splattered a nearby wall while his body hit the concrete floor with a dull thud. This guy he just killed wasn't a hunter, just a regular dude, but he carried a whopping 800 karma on his shoulders. This place was definitely full of inhuman trash. Now, Jin-hyuk could kill everyone involved in this operation without hesitation. Going through the closed door, he was greeted by a long corridor filled with prison cells. This had to be where all the kidnapped women were kept. Living conditions in each cell were abysmal. They were chained like animals waiting their turn to be used as fertilizer for that damn elixir. Jin-hyuk's thoughts were interrupted by a man's voice asking who he was. One of the cells in this prison row was different from the rest. Instead of a woman, there was a guy locked up. Jin-hyuk also recognized the uniform the man wore, the Tyrant Guild uniform. The prisoner warned the kid to run before it was too late, since everyone in that facility had gone crazy. Outside, the team leader, a contemptible guy, was looking at his watch and timing Jin-hyuk's infiltration. It had been a while since the kid went in, and everything was still quiet. Maybe it was time for the main force to move too. Yang-suk ordered his men to advance and be ready near the facility, prepped to enter if anything unusual happened. As soon as he gave the signal, the Titans rushed forward like a swarm of flies in their black jackets. Lucia just stood there, motionless and carefree. Yang-suk couldn't figure out what her problem was. Finally, Four Eyes also joined his men to be on standby while Jin-hyuk did all the work inside. Lucia wondered if it was her time to do her part too. Before the mission began, Jin-hyuk swore to handle the situation inside the building on his own. Lucia's job was to closely watch the Titans from outside. They still didn't know what Yang-suk might try, so Lucia had to stay alert. The kid warned her not to get too involved, but that was never her style. Inside the facility, the prisoner introduced himself as Dae-yoon. Jin-hyuk asked the guy why a Tyrant Guild member like him was in such a sorry state. Dae-yoon confessed they jailed him for trying to kill Auron in person. Now they kept him alive only for his illusion skills. That distortion effect on the protective barrier and the fake guard had to be his work. Jin-hyuk was curious why this guy wanted to sabotage his guild's investigation. The reason was simple. Dae-yoon couldn't stand seeing his comrades throw women to the monsters as bait. He'd reached his limit and tried to finish Auron once and for all, only to get caught and locked up. Jin-hyuk was pleasantly surprised to see a reasonable Tyrant Guild member like this guy. Even his karma score was low, just 62. The kid officially invited Dae-yoon to team up and take down that damn facility. Meanwhile, the recruit assigned to monitor the control room was sound asleep in his comfy office chair. Upon waking up, he realized he'd fallen asleep on the job once again. He always got sleepy at that time, so it wasn't nothing new, and nothing ever happened in that place, so it was all good. But today was different. Instead of waking up to live feeds of the whole facility, he woke up to black screens. He looked around trying to figure out what was going on, but got nothing. Panicked, he tried to power the system back up, but the problem was the power source, destroyed by Jin-hyuk's EMP. Every electronic device, including smartphones, was out of service. The whole computer system was down, and he'd been sleeping through it all. The control room dude was on his way to becoming Employee of the Month. Outside the command center, some guys from the Tyrant Guild were playing cards to kill time. They were having fun until the control room dude started yelling about an emergency. The Tyrant Guild guys freaked out, and worst of all, their game got interrupted. The control room dude told them the whole system was completely down. To make matters worse, all the women had vanished from their cells. They had an intruder who'd thrown the whole place into chaos. The team leaders split their forces in two. Team 1 headed to Auron's production room, while Team 2 looked for the intruder and the women. As for the idiot who let this happen, the control room dude was tasked with finding a way to contact HQ, no matter how. Every prison cell had been opened, freeing the kidnapped women. At that moment, they were heading to the nearest exit, fighting for their lives. Dae-yoon knew the facility layout, so he guided everyone the best way out. They'd gotten so close, yet so far, as the Tyrant Guild guys caught up in their escape attempt. Upon Finn and the women fleeing, the Tyrant Guild guys started pouring in mass. The first responder immediately recognized Dae-yoon, who was leading the girls to the exit. Like a true hero, he let the women pass and stayed behind to buy more time for them to escape. The first Tyrant Guild dude got too hyped and charged solo, threatening to kill Dae-yoon once and for all. But as soon as he threw his hit, Dae-yoon reminded his old buddy of his specialty, illusions. The Tyrant Guild dude could barely hold his anger for Fallon for such a simple trick. While Team 2 played catch with Dae-yoon and the girls, Team 1 was suffering a much rougher fate. Each of them only had a knife, useless in a baseball bat fight. Jin-hyuk quickly finished off the team assigned to guard Oran's production room. He used his superior footwork and technique to roast those mediocre fighters one by one. The young guy knocked each one out with a single swing per damn dude. Jin-hyuk ended the last Tyrant Guild guy without even breaking a sweat. Seeing these guys desperately trying to hold the front door, it was clear Oran was behind it. Jin-hyuk accessed the room and entered carefully. He looked around and saw all the gear those miserable Tyrant Guild fools had gathered to make the inhumane drug. They'd gone so far as to hide a massive underground lab for extra security. Person-sized test tubes filled the lab, each holding women the Tyrant Guild had kidnapped. Seeing the scale of this evil operation in person was even nastier than Jin-hyuk had imagined. In the middle of the lab was a monster locked inside a protective glass capsule. It must be Oran, the source of all this pain and evil. Jin-hyuk gripped his bat tight. The monster didn't seem to react to his presence. It was totally possible it was sleeping. With a smile on his face, the young man summoned the lightning inside his weapon and took a bat swing stance. If all went well, he could end this once and for all, but that'd be too easy. Oran must have felt the danger and woke up. It broke the protective glass and fiercely lashed its tentacles forward. Jin-hyuk had to move and dodge quick, as the tentacles, moving fast, aimed for his vital spots. His lightning attack had to be cancelled. He watched the tentacle moves, and his fear grew seeing how heavy and fast they were. If they hit him wrong, he'd be done for. For now, all he could do was stay defensive, waiting and praying for a chance to strike back. Jin-hyuk forced himself to focus. He had to stay calm if he wanted to get out of this alive. For those hoping to see a cute tentacle girl, today ain't that day. Oran looked like a tentacle junkie. Finally, the addicted beast broke its glass capsule, sending thousands of sharp shards flying everywhere. Looks like our guy's completely outmatched this time. But suddenly his known skills called hard skin activated, so he didn't take many wounds. Jin-hyuk dodged Oran's tentacle attacks and thought if he could keep dodging, he'd have a shot to charge Oran. So, suddenly he lunged forward, sweating Oran's tentacles, and since Oran's speed was so fast, it was still trying to avoid him. However, he didn't notice Oran was gonna hit him, so he threw himself away, using his weapon to stop the fall. His trajectory caught him sideways, and he couldn't believe it cause of the force of Oran's attack, cause even with armor and hard skin, he still felt the damage from that hit. That's why our hero got serious. Talking damage, he immediately charged and, with no trouble, dodged and ambushed Oran's tentacles. But every time he attacked with his weapon, he'd fall from the attack's force. Still, he used the wall to immediately get back in position. Our hero charged again, real fast, surprising Oran, who didn't notice how quick Jin-hyuk was attacking. Jin-hyuk stabbed it, making Oran's core scream, cause it got destroyed. In its last attack, Oran used its lightning skill, and Jin-hyuk shouted that Oran had to disappear cause it was a monster holding people. Oran was shocked, cause lightning came out of Jin-hyuk's weapon. Then, suddenly, Oran exploded, cause it couldn't take the damage anymore. Its body pieces scattered all over and dissolved right away, leaving only its magic stone. Jin-hyuk grabbed it immediately, and wondered if it really was a magic stone. He examined it carefully cause of the size of the stone he held and thought it looked like a magic stone, so he put it in his inventory and decided he'd ask the dwarf blacksmith when he got back. Jin-hyuk thought he was done with Oran, so he contacted the folks outside. He took the blue crystal to talk to Lucia and asked what was going on outside, adding if the women had escaped safely. Lucia answered that both women and men were coming down the mountains and added that their pursuers wore the same outfits as them. Lucia asked what was going on, and Jin-hyuk explained the situation, saying the man she referred to was jailed by the Tyrant Guild cause of the marks, but seemed trustworthy. So, she decided Jin-hyuk would join him. He told Lucia not to worry, 'cause the man was on their side. Lucia got what Jin-hyuk meant, and asked if he'd managed to kill Oran. Jin-hyuk said he'd finished Oran and that the magic stone was in his hands. Then, Jin-hyuk asked what was happening with those chasing the women. Lucia explained that, at that moment, they were fighting. She said when the ones in white uniforms showed up, the Titan Guild members started battling them. But weirdly the ones in white ate something and their forms changed. Slowly, the Titan Guild members started losing ground. Suddenly, Jin-hyuk realized what Lucia mentioned was what the man had said, a drug called Oran, which boosted physical strength like a magic stone, but at the cost of sanity. The Titan Guild members kept fighting the white uniforms, and one Titan Guild member got beheaded by a masked member from the same guild. Jin-hyuk told Lucia it'd be a problem if the Titan Guild got beaten, so he asked her to help the Titan Guild members, even though they were usually a pain. For now, they had to stop the Tyrant Guild from defeating the Titan Guild. Lucia understood and confirmed she'd only attack the white ones. As she prepared to attack, she told Jin-hyuk that, after all, he should be making her chocolates. The scene changed to our hero walking, thinking that, finally, his plans were going his way. Then he asked the one who was hiding why he didn't come out of his hiding place, referring to him as Messenger. The man with the gas mask couldn't believe that our hero had detected his presence. Jin-hyuk asked him if he was looking for him, or the Oran magic stone. The masked man took off his hood and lunged forward, saying his goal was the same as Jin-hyuk's, but suddenly changed target. Jin-hyuk smiled and told him that, since that was the decision he made, he'd make sure he regretted it. The mercenary immediately pulled out his knife and tried to finish the guy with one blow, but Jin-hyuk easily dodged it. Jin-hyuk hit him with his elbow, and the mercenary didn't have time to dodge, flying several meters away. The mercenary was immediately shocked. After all, such a reaction speed was impossible for a normal rank C hunter. Was the poison dart he blocked last time just a lucky hit? But after all, Jin-hyuk was just a rank C hunter. However, Jin-hyuk was stronger and kicked him in the head. Then, Jin-hyuk threw his bat straight at him, but missed and hit the wall. In his next attack, he used an auto-return. The mercenary managed to dodge the attack, and taking advantage of good timing, hoped to kill him. However, when launching a back attack, Jin-hyuk easily dodged it. The mercenary was very surprised to notice the guy was wearing armor. He decided to attack once more, but Jin-hyuk deflected the shiny knife by throwing his head back to avoid the hit. Jin-hyuk launched his strongest attacks and asked the mercenary where he thought he was gonna run. Then, he used his electric attack with the bat, and said this time he couldn't escape. The mercenary immediately realized he was in serious trouble, and unable to dodge, used his shield. Although he managed to resist, he exclaimed in amazement that he could barely block it. Looking around, the mercenary only saw fog and wondered where Jin-hyuk could be. He took advantage of the confusion and attacked with his bat, stabbing it in the mercenary's chest. He told the guy it was useless, that he couldn't be that strong. Jin-hyuk replied that he wasn't as weak as he thought. The mercenary retorted he couldn't be, but Jin-hyuk said there wouldn't be a next time, and that place would be his grave forever. After the invasion, the mercenaries said all the bodies were removed and burned to the ground. One of the mercenaries ordered his men to attend the wounded, while he went to make the report. At that moment, Yansuk was bandaging his hand and thought, the tyrants, who would have thought they were hiding drugs? If that woman hadn't helped them, they'd have died. These arrows, their power was almost at rank S level. Yansuk wondered if there'd ever been a hunter that strong. At that moment, a mercenary approached and informed the situation officer. The wounded have been taken to the hospital and all possible evidence has been processed. Yansuk congratulated the mercenary for a good job, and now that they had dealt with the tyrant, suggested they go inside and properly finish the celebration. But suddenly, someone shouted at them to wait a minute. Yansuk, surprised, asked if that man hadn't betrayed the tyrants. Daeyun, panting, replied he had a message to deliver. The leader of the Tyrant Guild and his main forces were on their way there. Yansuk asked surprised if the guild leader, Cho Woncheol, of the tyrants, would come. Daeyun replied yes. Yansuk immediately thought that, if a rank C hunter like Cho Woncheol was coming, they had no chance. Would they really have to go back to the past, when they only had to defeat them? Suddenly, a mercenary asked over radio what was happening. One answered they could see the Tyrant Guild hunters approaching, about 4 or 5. They might be the vanguard. The mercenary said it seemed the guy's words were true and asked what they should do now. Yansuk thought and realized they had no choice. He declared the operation ended there and ordered everyone to retreat quickly. The mercenary immediately gave the order to his men to evacuate the place. Yeon-suk asked the guy if he'd leave with them. Dae-yoon replied no, he'd stay and prepare an alibi. If he disappeared too, it would look suspicious. He'd stay and present a false report, making it look like someone else did it. They had to avoid a war between the Titan and Tyrant guilds. Yeon-suk agreed and said they'd do it that way. He also added they'd include the Hunter Kong from the Titan Guild in the report, since it'd be the most natural way to explain it. The Titan Guild retreats, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. A mercenary asks if they should trust an apparent traitor, but Yeon-suk made clear the important thing was to buy time to prepare for the imminent total war. Without more words, they left. At some distance, Dae-yoon stood still, watching the surroundings. An elf approached him determined, asking if he was the person Jin-hyuk mentioned. Confirmed this, she led him inside, where Jin-hyuk awaited. Upon entering, Jin-hyuk seemed satisfied with how smoothly everything was going, while the elf, curious, asked if he had solved the recent problems. Jin-hyuk confirmed he had dealt with the individual following them. Dae-yoon took the opportunity to get information about the current situation. Jin-hyuk explained that Oran was dead. He asked for help to manipulate the circumstances, making it look like he died fighting Oran. The elf asks, "Are you planning to blame him for everything?" Jin-hyuk asked her to read the diary, since it had all the names of the recent serial murder victims. This man was the great guild killer who's been shaking the public, responsible for several recent deaths, and blaming him would divert suspicion to a convenient target. Jin-hyuk asked the man, "Can you do it?" Although the elf expressed doubts about possible future complications, Jin-hyuk assured everything was under control. Dae-yoon took the lead and organized the next steps. He explained that the Tyrant Guild's advance, visible in the distance, was nothing but an illusion created by him to buy time. This gave them a 2-hour margin before the real danger arrived. Before saying goodbye, he thanked Jin-hyuk for saving both him and his group. However, Jin-hyuk downplayed the gesture, assuring him to contact once everything was settled. As he walked away, Jin-hyuk reflected on the blows suffered by the Tyrant Guild, and anticipated the consequences this event would have on the delicate power balance among the guilds. The scene changed to the Titan Guild Master and his secretary, who discussed the implications of the recent events. Aware of the gravity of the problem, they decided to share information anonymously to avoid direct retaliation from the Tyrant Guild. Although this strategy would benefit other guilds, the Master was convinced it was the only way to avoid a large-scale war. After making this decision, the secretary distributed the information confidentially. Next, we see the news reporting on the criminal activities of the Tyrant Guild. People talk about it everywhere. The Tyrant Guild is not cooperating with the investigation, and many of its members have been arrested. Seeing this, Yeon-suk curses his guild master, saying he ruined everything. Then he calls him and yells, "Why did you give the information anonymously? We did all the work, and now those Ultron bastards are being treated like heroes." The guild master replies, "If we had revealed it, the Tyrant Guild would have crushed us before the guilds could unite." Yeon-suk says, "If my plan to recruit the rank S hunter succeeds, the Tyrant Guild won't have a chance." The guild master replies, "Can you guarantee a win against the Tyrant Guild master? And what about the damage to cities and civilians?" Yeon-suk answers, "If we absorb the Tyrant Guild's power, it would be a minor loss." The guild master shouts, "What's the point of being a hunter if we can't protect civilians?" Yeon-suk says, "I was just thinking about the guild's interests." The master, annoyed, replies, "Don't dress up your selfishness as loyalty to the guild." Then he hangs up. The man hits the monitor and says, "As long as he's the guild master, the Titan Guild will never progress." Then he calls someone. The person on the other side replies, "Another recruiting call? I told you I'm not interested unless it's for the guild master position." Yeon-suk says, "I'll give it to you. I'll make you guild master." It's a sunny day and Jin-hyuk stops upon arriving at a crowded mall. He checks the location on his cell phone and thinks, "Definitely this is the place he told me about, right? He said we'd meet secretly. And yet he chose a spot like this?" Jin-hyuk enters the mall and quickly spots with his eyes the person he was supposed to meet, who will give him key info for his next moves. It's Dae-yoon, who's sitting at a cafe table. He waves with his hand, signaling the hunter to come over while sipping an iced tea. As he approaches, Jin-hyuk notices how relaxed Dae-yoon looks, so he asks his informant if things are going according to plan, to which he answers affirmatively, that everything's going better than expected. Jin-hyuk takes a seat and asks if the lies he prepared had worked. Dae-yoon replies yes, and thanks to that he's now in a much more comfortable position within the guild. However, he quickly changes his expression and seriously adds that, still, it's too soon to relax. Jin-hyuk understands the tone of the talk changed fast, so he listens seriously to what his companion is saying. "I'll get straight to the point," Seems like they're forming a chase team to find him, Mr. Kang Jin-hyuk, Dae-yoon said with worry. Confident, Jin-hyuk grabs an iced tea from the table and takes a sip. He asks his informant if they'll really come after him, doubting the guild has enough resources to do so since they're on the edge of collapse. Dae-yoon replies he's got a good point, but some guild execs raise suspicions after the incident. They think it's too convenient that the news of the assassin's body discovery reached the media so fast. That makes them wonder if there's another culprit behind it. Jin-hyuk listens closely but stays relaxed cause he knows he left no evidence to incriminate him. Dae-yoon confirms he's right, so they shouldn't worry about his identity being exposed as the perpetrator. Still, he insists better safe than sorry, so being cautious wouldn't hurt. Alright, you're saying I should keep a low profile for now? Jin-hyuk asks to confirm they're on the same page. Dae-yoon nods, adding that if things stay put for a while, the Tyrant Guild will soon collapse. The informant asks the hunter again to be careful till then, handing him his smartphone. There's info on those in charge of the ongoing investigation. He thinks Jin-hyuk might want to check the list right away. He suggests he read it instead of telling him outright, so no suspicion arises. However, Jin-hyuk doesn't seem nervous about the situation, so he starts browsing without much interest in the list's content. The sharp hunter makes a comment that surprises Dae-yoon. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. After all, they're all illusions, am I wrong? Dae-yoon is surprised by Jin-hyuk's insight. He noticed all the people in the cafe were really illusions created by him. Jin-hyuk doubles down, telling the stunned investigator he knew it from the start. Dae-yoon is shocked how fast his trick was noticed. Incisive, the hunter demands Dae-yoon tell him exactly who the guild members chasing him are. He reminds him he can say it out loud since there's no one else but them in that room. Dae-yoon finally reveals the info, telling him it's an archer and a mage. He adds both are masters of disguise and magic concealment, so they might try to catch him off guard. He warns Jin-hyuk they could even pretend to be someone he knows to attack him when his guard is down. Jin-hyuk processes all the info and asks his informant if that's all the info he's got. Dae-yoon interrupts and adds there's one more thing he needs to show him. He pulls from his pocket a shiny silver object, the size of a coin. Showing it, he asks the hunter if he's familiar with monster counters. This sparks a faint memory in Jin-hyuk, who recalls a similar stopwatch-like device used while helping the Titan Guild. But looking closely, he notices it looks different than the one he knew. It's smaller, with no numbers or letters on it. He tells Dae-yoon it's different from the version he knows. The association's informant tells him that's cause what he's holding is a much more advanced version of the existing monster counter, which was developed by the association to monitor hunters after the Oran incident. Jin-hyuk studies the device carefully while still listening to Dae-yoon, who says that from now on, all hunters belonging to a guild must carry the counter officially, and that they'll have to be monitored by the association to prevent future problems. Jin-hyuk thinks to himself this tracking system will be a pain, since even hunting in his dungeon could become problematic. Dae-yoon continues, suggesting if Jin-hyuk plans to take the pill he should hurry. Doing it after the monitoring system activates might draw the association's attention, since they notice his strength spike suddenly, and even the Tyrant Guild would start suspecting him if that happens. Jin-hyuk leaves them all, and while walking down the street can't stop turning over the idea of the monitoring system. After thinking it over, he concludes the best thing he can do is get stronger, even a little, before they start watching him. To do that, he decides to go to the dungeon right then. In the next scene, we're already in the dungeon. We see the dwarf blacksmith's workshop from outside, and a deafening shout pierces the sky. It's the boss, the dwarf, who scolds Jin-hyuk fiercely. Are you making fun of me? I send you to fetch some ore and you disappear without a word. And now you come back like nothing after weeks. And you show me this? The boss yells while holding the ore Jin-hyuk brought him. The human apologizes and tries to excuse himself, saying he went through unavoidable circumstances. The blacksmith ignores it and keeps scolding him. He complains he thought Jin-hyuk was dead somewhere, but now he just shows up like nothing. Jin-hyuk tries to lower the tension by interrupting the dwarf's threat, but the boss keeps yelling. He says the material Jin-hyuk brought is cursed or full of countless grudges, and that dwarves are vulnerable to curses to the point they can't even look at stuff like that. Then Jin-hyuk remembered Lucia wouldn't even come near the boss's house while that material was there, so he knew what the boss said was true. The boss kept scolding and calling Jin-hyuk stupid, until deciding to toss the ore. Knowing the value of the material, Jin-hyuk hatches a plan to mess with the boss's head so he won't toss it. Touching the boss's pride, he gets him to spill valuable info that gives use to the ore. The boss tells him that under the cliff where he found that cursed material lies the so-called Dragon Temple. He gave him the temple key and said there he could purify the ore's curse. and after that, he could use the material to forge something way more impressive than his bat. In the next scene, we see Jin-hyuk and Lucia walking into the so-called Dragon Temple, while talking about the chat the human and the dwarf had on the surface. Before opening the temple doors, Lucia warns Jin-hyuk about the kind of place the temple is. She tells him it's more dangerous than any dungeon he's ever been in, and if he ain't careful he might die. Lucia thinks it over again, and decides to back out, and go home to get ready better. Jin-hyuk questions her, but finally decides to take the warning from the experienced elf. Already at his place, Jin-hyuk's laying on the floor, wiped out from the trip back. He's thinking about what else he should bring to the dungeon besides potions and scrolls. Suddenly, he hears a noise coming from his kitchen and bolts out. There he sees Lucia scarfing down a whole month's ration in a blink, making him mad at the elf who don't seem to care. Then, Jin-hyuk's phone rings. He answers. It's Lee Hai-na, the Titan Guild secretary. Breathless, she begs Jin-hyuk for help. If he don't hurry, the guild master Sang-ho's gonna get killed. Jin-hyuk, shocked, dashes to the call's location. At the guild master's place, the secretary cries while bondaged in the guild master. She tries to comfort him, but he's hurt bad all over, coughing up blood. The secretary breaks down crying even though the master asks her not to, when suddenly the door rings. It's Hunter Jin-hyuk, come in to help. Quick, Jin-hyuk puts a first aid potion on the master's wound, making him writhe in pain for a while. Late at night, everyone's calmer cause the master's health is steady now. Then Jin-hyuk asks, "What happened?" The master says he fell into a trap, and guild members betrayed him. It went down at the guild event, which he went to after getting home. After watching for a bit, he noticed that weirdly the only faction there was Han Young-suk's. By the time he smelled something fishy, it was already too late. Young-suk handed him a poisoned wine glass, and once the poison kicked in, all the members jumped to attack him. With his last strength, the master grabbed his weapon and fought with everything to escape. He made it home, but in terrible shape. After hearing the story, Jin-hyuk finds something odd. He says even poisoned, the master shouldn't have trouble talking out a bunch of regular guild members. He hints the master left out something in his story. Then, the master tries to tell the rest, but his wounds start opening again. Apparently, the poison was way stronger than they thought. Jin-hyuk asks if he knows what kind of poison it was, and if there's an antidote. Hai-na, the secretary, says she don't know what antidote hunters use. Jin-hyuk suggests talking the master to a hunter hospital, but he refuses cause that'd be an easy target. Jin-hyuk tells the secretary to take her car, load the master in the back seat, and head straight to his place. She asks if he's got the antidote. Jin-hyuk says no, but thinks he's got a way to treat it. Jin-hyuk and Hai-na speed off in the car, breaking several traffic laws on the way. On the road, a red car almost hits them, but they dodge it. The master tries hard to stay awake. At a red light, the secretary tells Jin-hyuk the parked car behind them looks familiar. It's the same red car that tried to crash them a few minutes ago. Then Jin-hyuk realizes they'd been followed all this time. The light turns green. Jin-hyuk decides they can't take the Thailand car to his place, so he starts thinking up a plan. He tells the secretary to head for a vacant lot with a building under construction. When they get there, Jin-hyuk tells her he'll get out to hold off the red car as long as he can, and she should use the time to haul the master home fast. Jin-hyuk steps out with firm strides, ready to buy time. In front of him stands a hunter with a ponytail, dressed in black and a red scarf. "What the? Co Sang-ho ain't here, and instead there's this dude I've never seen? You seriously trying to block me?" said the hunter. Jin-hyuk's shocked, can't believe it's just one pursuer. Suddenly, he looks back at the car and sees it hasn't moved yet. Hesitant, he grabs his phone and calls Hai-na, the secretary, asking why she didn't run like he told her. Hai-na screams in panic, begging Jin-hyuk not to face the pursuer and to run now, cause it's Kang Juntae, a Class S hunter. Jin-hyuk stunned by the secretary's words. He's in a super dangerous spot. His presence detection skill kicks in right away, letting him dodge a surprise hit from Juntae. Jin-hyuk's blown away by the Class S hunter's power, like nothing he's ever seen. Jin-hyuk tells Hai-na to run, and after a couple tries he convinces her. The car with the master peels out fast in the opposite direction from the hunters. Seeing that, Juntae grabs his spear and leaps with crazy power at the car. He's ready to stab through the roof with his spear, but seconds before impact Jin-hyuk interrupts with a flying kick to stop him. Incredible, Juntae dodges at the last second even while suspended in air. Pissed at Jin-hyuk's interference, he blasts him away with a hit. But Jin-hyuk's plan worked, slowing him down enough so he can't catch the car. Hai-na watches the two hunters in her rearview mirror, crying that she can't help Jin-hyuk, begging him to come back home alive. Back to the fight, Juntae's furious at Jin-hyuk's interference. Still, he mocks him saying he's busy, and if he wants to stay alive he should run. Jin-hyuk gets up from the ground, recovers, and yells back with rage. You really think I'd run scared from a dude like you? Please! The S-rank hunter admits the young man has some serious guts for challenging him like that, and before finishing the sentence, he launches into a full-speed frontal outburst. He grabs Jin-hyuk by the chest of his hoodie and tries to strike him with the spear he holds in his other hand. The young hunter manages to block him, but notices that his opponent is not only fast, each of his blows also carries lethal potential. Juntae starts provoking Jin-hyuk more and more, yelling at him to show what he's made of. After that, he lets go of his clothes, grips his spear with both hands as if it were a baseball bat, and unleashes a wide circular strike. Jin-hyuk barely manages to dodge it, knowing that if he'd taken that hit, he wouldn't be alive to tell the tale. Juntae gets ready to land another blow, while Jin-hyuk takes the opportunity to equip his chainmail armor from his inventory. It has the trait of reducing physical and magical damage taken by 50%. Right after, Juntae grazes Jin-hyuk's left side with his spear, but he comes out unharmed thanks to the newly equipped armor. Somewhat impressed, the S-rank hunter says he didn't know the Titan Guild Master had someone like Jin-hyuk under his command. Then he remembers hearing about a C-rank hunter who had supposedly captured a new kind of monster. Thinking out loud, he concludes that this hunter is, in fact, Jin-hyuk. The young hunter grows concerned upon realizing his identity has just been exposed, meaning that not even escaping would guarantee they won't eventually find his home. And after thinking it through a bit more, he believes that escaping from this monster might not even be possible. Surprisingly, Juntae pauses the fight for a few seconds to offer a deal. He extends his hand and proposes ending the fight, only if Jin-hyuk agrees to join him. He says the new Titan Guild could benefit from having someone like him on their side. Without delay, Jin-hyuk makes a decision and tells Juntae, "Okay, I've decided. It's pathetic that I even hesitated before the fight. I reject your offer. Let's end this thing, bastard," answered the C-rank hunter, showing his full disdain toward his opponent. Meanwhile, far from the fight, night falls at Jin-hyuk's house. Haina managed to get the king safely to Lucia, who uses her elven powers to treat his poisoning. She manages to stop the poison spread for a while, but can't fully heal him. Lucia asks Haina to step out of the room so they can talk privately. There, she tells her the poison is too strong, even for her. The secretary asks if there's a solution, to which Lucia replies that maybe there is, but she'll need Jin-hyuk to go into the dungeon. Haina begins to worry again as she thinks about Jin-hyuk, and wonders why he hasn't returned yet. Back at the fight, Jin-hyuk barely manages to stop a strike from Juntae's spear. Suddenly, Juntae thrusts forward with a jab that he barely avoids. "Are you just gonna keep dodging? Let's fight to the end!" screams the S-rank hunter, as he throws another thrust, barely blocked by Jin-hyuk's bat. The force is overwhelming. Jin-hyuk is stunned by the blow and drops his guard. At that moment, Juntae punches Jin-hyuk in the face with his left hand. He goes flying and bounces off the wall behind him like a punching bag. Before he hits the ground, Juntae lands a kick to his left side that leaves him sprawled on the floor. Exhausted, Jin-hyuk tries to get back up while his opponent belittles him. He knows he's at his limit. Drinking a potion would get him back in the fight, but he knows the relentless attacks won't give him the time. After weighing his options, he concludes there's only one viable choice: land a decisive strike. Juntae provokes him to keep attacking. Jin-hyuk charges forward at high speed and swings his bat, but his opponent effortlessly jumps over it. Jin-hyuk wonders why he can't land a single hit. While dodging a downward strike from the S-rank hunter's spear, he grows bored of the fight and, in a sudden twist, kicks Jin-hyuk in the face, causing it to twist violently and inflicting major damage. Jin-hyuk slumps against a beam from the blow, and Juntae hurls his spear to finish him off. Jin-hyuk sees the attack coming straight at him, does everything he can to dodge, but his body doesn't respond. He's exhausted. The spear races toward him. There's a white flash. We finally see Jin-hyuk drop his bat. The spear has pierced through the right side of his chest. However, the young hunter is still alive, though barely, after all the damage taken. Surprised, Juntae approaches and says, "You managed to move your body a few centimeters to avoid a vital point. In just a split second? That's pretty impressive. My offer still stands. What do you say?" That's nonsense, Jin-hyuk replied. After hearing the response, Juntae reacted quickly and violently, saying that if he wanted to fight to the end, then he had no other choice. He charged up his fist to finish Jin-hyuk off. It seems like the end for the C-rank hunter, when suddenly, an arrow flies through the air, headed straight for Juntae's head, which he dodges only by interrupting his final attack. Jin-hyuk recognizes the arrow, and his face lights up with relief, breaking into a smile. It's Lucia, who appeared at the last moment to save him. Chapter 30 begins with a brief flashback of Lucia before arriving at the scene of the fight. We see her using a GPS for the first time to find her way in the human world. Despite the urgency of the scene, it starts on a lighter note, adding a bit of humor since we know she made it in time. Back in the present, Lucia's explosive shot was inches from hitting Juntae's head. The killer is stunned by the power of the stealth attack. He can't believe a simple arrow could carry such devastating force. Lucia calmly walks toward the two hunters. Her presence is a breath of fresh air for Jin-hyuk, who thought he was done for. The elf asks the young hunter if he's still alive, apologizing for the delay, to which he replies that it was a close one. Juntae remains confused, wondering if that woman approaching is the one who attacked him, since at first glance, she doesn't seem strong enough to pull off such a powerful strike. Alright, whatever, I'll find out myself, says the S-rank hunter as he yanks the spear from Jin-hyuk's chest, causing him great pain. Looks like you came to save this guy, continues Juntae as Lucia watches him unfazed. If you don't want to die, I hope that attack wasn't just luck. Juntae lunges at Lucia with a brutal thrust. However, the elf effortlessly blocks the attack using only her left hand, which is surrounded by a magical barrier that completely stops the strike. Lucia looks down on the intimidated Juntae, and teasingly tells him to think more carefully about who will kill whom if they fight. Juntae can't believe that this woman, who didn't seem all that strong, could block a spear strike from a hunter of his strength so easily. Lucia interrupts Juntae's thoughts. Arrogant fool, relying on such weak strength. I'd like to teach you a lesson, but for now, I'll just give you a warning. Lucia closes her left hand, bursting the magic barrier she had used to stop the spear. This creates a magical blast that quickly begins disintegrating Juntae's spear. Before the blast reaches him, the hunter crosses his arms over his face and summons a shield to block the shockwave. At that moment, Lucia takes advantage of his exposed chest and punches him in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him. Juntae is terrified by the elf's strength. Jin-hyuk is also surprised. He thinks to himself that he knew Lucia was strong, but he never imagined her power was truly that high. Juntae tries to catch his breath after being pushed back several meters by Lucia's blow, while she stares him down, completely still, waiting for his next move. The hunter can't believe her strength, and starts wondering if she's a foreign S-rank hunter. Otherwise he should have heard about someone that powerful. Lucia turns to Jin-hyuk and asks if he can move. He nods. Hearing this, the elf gives Jin-hyuk a surprising choice. She asks if she should kill Juntae right then and there. Jin-hyuk responds coldly. Despite his injuries and the heat of battle, he tells her not to, because they don't need to keep getting involved in guild problems. Surely remembering the plan and the advice Dae-yoon gave him earlier, then Jin-hyuk asks Juntae if it sounds good to him to call the fight off right there. The S-rank hunter thinks to himself, finding it ironic that even though Jin-hyuk lost, he's the one talking like he's got his life in his hands. However, after analyzing it, he realizes that if the fight continues, he might end up seriously hurt too, so he decides to take Jin-hyuk's offer. Juntae tells the duo that he's tired, so he accepts the proposal. Lucia says that's just an excuse, since she knows her power is vastly superior and that the hunter is retreating because he's afraid she might fatally injure him. Jin-hyuk asks her not to keep fueling the conflict, to which the elf replies she was just joking. Juntae leaves, but not before telling the protagonists he won't forget what happened that day, and that they'll meet again soon. And when that happens, it'll be the day the arrogant woman and the C-rank hunter Jin-hyuk die. After the assassin leaves, Lucia and Jin-hyuk remain at the scene of the fight. The elf is healing Jin-hyuk's chest wound using energy potions. After some time, Lucia manages to heal him enough for the young hunter to move again without worsening the damage. She says the wound wasn't as serious as she initially thought, likely thanks to Jin-hyuk moving in time to avoid a vital hit. He thanks Lucia for the treatment, and tells her it's incredible that she was able to close an open wound like that and fully heal it. The elf brags and playfully tells him he's finally seeing how powerful she really is. Jin-hyuk plays along and agrees, adding that with combat skills like that and healing powers, she's basically an OP character. Lucia responds confused, not understanding what he means by overpowered character. Jin-hyuk realizes and tells her not to worry, it was a compliment. Now more at ease, the hunter asks about the condition of the Titan Guild Master, Seo Sang-ho. Lucia tells him he's resting at home, but proper treatment will be difficult. But you never know, maybe the dwarf in the dungeon has the antidote for the poison Sang-ho ingested. Not wasting time, Jin-hyuk says they should go back quickly, as every second counts. Lucia follows, warning him to be careful moving so fast, since his wound could reopen from sudden movements. Jin-hyuk knows, but he also knows they need to get home as soon as possible, since now that his identity has been exposed, he could be attacked at any moment out in the open. Already in the dungeon, Jin-hyuk returns to the dwarf blacksmith's workshop, who once again greets him with shouting. He scolds him and refuses to help because he didn't bring the mineral he asked him to purify at the Dragon Temple. Additionally, he asks what he expects him to do with the poisoned person he brought to his workshop. It is revealed that Jin-hyuk brought the guild master directly into the dungeon, and he now rests on the ground waiting to be treated. Jin-hyuk apologizes and says they need to save that person's life first, and that he will repay him later. The master suffers from the poisoning, barely able to stay conscious. The dwarf chief replies that unfortunately he can't do anything to treat him, since he was poisoned by basilisk venom, and that he has no way of getting the materials necessary to make the antidote to heal him. Jin-hyuk asks him to please check if he has anything that could help in the meantime, managing to soften the dwarf a little, who tells him to wait, while he looks in his storage. Then the guild master asks Jin-hyuk if he can tell him where exactly they are right now. Jin-hyuk tells him he understands that he has many questions, but for now he should think of that space as just one more of his abilities. Sang-ho accepts the explanation and asks if it's okay for Jin-hyuk to reveal a place like this. Then the young hunter responds respectfully, saying that since he placed his trust in him first, he decided he could also return that trust. The dwarf chief returns from his storage with a potion. It's a medicine that will buy them a bit of time, approximately half a day. The guild master drinks it without hesitation. The dwarf emphasizes that this is merely a palliative, and that if they don't get the antidote in time, Sang-ho will die from the venom. Jin-hyuk asks if there's no other alternative. The dwarf replies that none, at least that he knows of. The young hunter starts thinking about his options. He knows that maybe they have the antidote at a hunter-specialized clinic, but he can't risk exposing them to the hunters who want him dead. Suddenly an idea comes to mind, so he grabs the guild master and returns home. There he tells Haina the situation Sang-ho is in, and that he has one last plan, but if it doesn't work, they'll genuinely be out of options. Jin-hyuk takes his smartphone and starts making a call. On the other end, Lee Juncheol answers and asks if everything is okay, as it seems strange to receive a call this late. Jin-hyuk wastes no time and gets straight to the point, asking if he has the antidote for basilisk venom. Juncheol on the other end replies no, but that he knows an underground doctor who might have it. Curious, he asks Jin-hyuk why he needs such a rare antidote. The hunter simply says that something happened and he needs the antidote. He asks if he could introduce him to the underground doctor so he can deal with him directly. The call receiver says that's fine and to send him an address, which Jin-hyuk agrees to. Then he adds that he assumes Jin-hyuk wants the doctor to visit discreetly, so since he's a VIP client, he'll make sure of that. Jin-hyuk ends the call and, encouraged, tells Haina that the doctor is on his way. The secretary bursts into tears from the relief of the news, not without thanking Jin-hyuk for all the help he's giving them, while Lucia watches her fondly for the strong bond she has with her guild master. The night goes on. A red van stops in front of Jin-hyuk's house. It's the doctor, who arrives and immediately applies the antidote to Sang-ho via syringe. Finally, he says the antidote effectively removed the basilisk venom, but it will take 2 weeks before he can move comfortably and fully recover. He adds that until then, the Titan Guild Master must completely rest. The doctor leaves the house and departs as quickly as he arrived. Jin-hyuk, who had gone out to see him off, stays pondering the underground doctor's words. He thinks it'll be a big problem that full recovery will take 2 weeks, as until then the master won't be able to fight. He believes he won't be enough to keep at bay those who come to attack him for so long. Even with Lucia's help, it might be too much for both of them. Jin-hyuk remembers his fight with Juntae, and admits he's too weak compared to the S-class hunter. I seriously underestimated the strength of an S-class. No, rather, I overestimated my own strength. That's what runs through the young hunter's mind, who believes that even if Sang-ho recovers, he'd just end up being a burden. Suddenly, Lucia appears to pull Jin-hyuk out of his defeatist thoughts. She tells him he seems full of unnecessary worries. He just stares at her for a few seconds before responding. He tells her that after fighting that S-class hunter, he realized that right now he's too weak. Far from arguing, Lucia tells him he's right, that right now he is weak, but encourages him by saying he'll eventually become stronger. Jin-hyuk looks at her in silence, with sorrow on his face. Then Lucia remembers a method to grow stronger. She warns him that it's a risky but safe method, and that if he's willing, she'll teach it to him. Totally determined, Jin-hyuk tells her of course he's willing, he'll do whatever it takes to become stronger. It's daytime now, Jin-hyuk is at home. The chapter begins with the young hunter preparing for the dungeon. He takes 50 explosive scrolls, 300 mana potions, and another 300 health potions. He decides to bring his current bat and armor, since they always give him good results. He wonders if that'll be enough. Lucia appears to remind him to take the return stone, to which he replies that he already packed it as it allows him to return any time in case of emergency. Lucia tells him it's a good idea to have at least one escape option in case things get dangerous. Jin-hyuk is ready to leave and asks Lucia to take good care of Haina and Sang-ho while he's gone, to which the elf replies to leave it in her hands. She finally warns him that the Dragon Temple is much more dangerous than he thinks, that she understands his will to become stronger no matter what, but if he gets greedy in the pursuit of power there, he'll die. So she recommends that as soon as he feels strong enough to fight his enemies, he should get out of there immediately. Jin-hyuk takes the warning lightly and tells her not to worry, he'll return using the return stone as soon as things get too dangerous. Haina, standing by the doorframe, tells Jin-hyuk she's sorry since he'll have to put himself in danger because of her. Jin-hyuk tells her she doesn't need to apologize, since he's seeking revenge, so this also serves his personal goal. Before entering the portal, Jin-hyuk turns his gaze to Lucia one last time and asks her to please take care of herself while he's gone. The elf nods as the hunter adds that she's the only one he can trust right now. I'll come back. Wait for me, because no matter what happens, I'll return stronger, says the C-class hunter as he enters the portal. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk stands in front of the Dragon Temple's gates. He observes the gigantic entrance, takes out the key the dwarf chief gave him, and inserts it into a groove between the two doors. Suddenly, the doors begin to open wide, letting out a glow that blinds him for a moment. He looks inside the temple while recalling Lucia's heavy words, "If you're greedy, you'll die." However, he thinks he didn't come this far to take things lightly, but to become much stronger. So he won't leave that place until he has enough strength to fight an S-class hunter head-on and defeat him. After stepping into the temple's light, the doors close behind him. Time passes since he entered, and Jin-hyuk thinks something strange. Since he's been walking for a while but can't see anything, he wonders if he's really going in the right direction. Suddenly, everything becomes clearer. He finds himself in a hall with a high ceiling, walking down a long red carpet surrounded by iron armors standing on both sides, as if escorting him. Jin-hyuk wonders if the armors are just decorations, since they feel somewhat threatening. Suddenly, a red light turns on inside one of the armor's helmets. It attacks Jin-hyuk from behind with a surprise thrust. The hunter reacts in time and pulls out his bat to block the attack as he retreats. Jin-hyuk is confused, wondering if in the end the armors weren't just monsters pretending to be lifeless objects. At first, he curses the situation he's in, but then remembers why he's there in the first place. He's there to become stronger, so he accepts the challenge and begins fighting the multiple armors. Jin-hyuk charges straight into the stampede of enemies. With a swing of his bat, he easily smashes the group of armors. Seeing them on the ground, he wonders what those things are. He boasts saying they look flashy on the outside, but turned out to be nothing special. However, a metallic noise grabs his attention from behind. As he turns, he notices the armors are quickly reassembling, and once finished, they once again form a battalion ready to attack. Seeing this, Jin-hyuk realizes he'll have to destroy their cores if he wants to destroy them for good. He admits that at another time he would have panicked upon seeing the armor deployment, but now it's a different story. The hunter charges his bat with electric energy, imbuing it with lightning. He leaps into the air over the group of armors and, powering up a mighty attack, yells, "With this I'll fry your cores in one hit!" Jin-hyuk slams the ground violently with his bat, spreading lightning throughout the entire room, hitting all the armors at once. They begin receiving the electric shock and quickly start burning until they collapse to the ground destroyed. Surrounded by the smoke cloud from the charred statues, Jin-hyuk brags, "How does electricity taste? You tin cans!" Jin-hyuk looks at them victoriously while posing with his bat over his shoulder. Back on Earth, atop the Titan Guild's building, stands Yang-suk. He curses Juntae for not being able to finish off Sang-ho and his guardian despite being an S-class hunter. He turns and asks his secretary about the executives supporting Guild Master Sang-ho. His secretary replies that they're currently confined in their homes under strict surveillance, and that all external communication like phones and internet was cut. Yang-suk tells him to keep monitoring them for now and make sure Sang-ho doesn't escape to take refuge with them. Suddenly, the office door bursts open. It's Juntae, who storms in violently shouting Yang-suk's name. The S-class angrily demands why he wasn't told there would be more obstacles in his mission. Yang-suk asks what's wrong for him to barge in and act so rudely. He adds that he's sure he gave him the information about the low-level hunter escorting the master. Juntae responds furiously that he's not talking about him, but about his companion, the archer woman. The secretary tries to calm him down a bit, but the hunter sends him flying with a fierce punch. Yang-suk starts thinking about Juntae's words. He wonders if the archer is the woman who was with Jin-hyuk. Finally, he confirms to the hunter that he thinks he knows who he's talking about, and asks if she outmatched him. This comment triggers Juntae's rage, who feels his pride hurt after the fight and tells his superior not to be mistaken, that if his spear hadn't broken. Yang-suk thinks that despite that, Juntae is a tough and capable enough opponent to win, and that he never thought that woman would be strong enough to stand up to him. The executive expresses his discontent at the appearance of a new opponent, and decides to come up with a new plan, this time accounting for the archer being on the enemy's side. He reminds Juntae that they must finish off Sang-ho as soon as possible, and only then will they be able to take full control of the Titan Guild. He adds that, since he was poisoned, he's probably on the brink of death right at this moment, and even if he's alive, he won't fight like before. Because of this, they must find him, and that will be his end. However, he adds that the problem will be getting past Jin-hyuk and the archer, so the guild must locate them soon. Finally, Yang-suk looks at Juntae and asks if when that time comes, he'll be able to finish them off once and for all. The assassin confidently replies that he will. The executive takes his word and trusts that it'll be so, and that once he takes care of those two, there will be no more variables, and that when that happens, the position of guild master will be his, referring to Juntae. Back at the Dragon Temple, Jin-hyuk opens another door to keep moving through the dungeon. He finds himself in the second room of the temple after defeating the armors. It feels strange that nothing has gotten in his way so far. He thinks he's reached the end of the room when he sees what appears to be a person sitting on a throne. He wonders how it's possible that someone is there, but upon taking a closer look, he notices something odd. That hooded man has a karma level of 0. Suddenly, the hooded man speaks to him. He says it's been a long time since he encountered a challenger. Jin-hyuk asks the hooded man who he is. The hooded man responds with another question, asking the hunter how he thinks he looks. Jin-hyuk hesitates before answering, but finally says that for starters, he doesn't look like an ordinary person. The hooded man asks why he thinks that, and follows up by saying if it's because he doesn't have accumulated karma. The answer takes Jin-hyuk by surprise, and he asks how he knows that. Jin-hyuk thinks to himself that there's something strange about this old man, and he fears that he might have figured out his abilities just by looking at him. The hooded man starts to rise from his throne while telling Jin-hyuk that wouldn't it be more important to discuss why the hunter is there in the first place. He asks if the reason for his visit is that glowing thing filled with curses and resentment that he's carrying. Jin-hyuk wonders if the old man is reading his mind, and proceeds to pull out from his inventory the cursed mineral he intended to purify inside the temple. The hooded man says that's a stone that grew by devouring people, full of deep grudges. Next, the old man extends his hand, places it on the stone, and says it won't be difficult. After this, a strong wave of energy begins to erupt from the mineral, changing its red color into a bright blue. The old man confirms that the purification was a success, and Jin-hyuk notices that the ominous energy completely disappeared from the mineral. The young hunter bows and thanks to the old man, who tells him to save his gratitude for when the real trial is over. Jin-hyuk doesn't understand what he means, when suddenly the hooded old man extends his arm, releasing a wave of energy that transcends Jin-hyuk into a cosmic state. "Don't let your guard down, or else you'll lose your life." The old man's words echo in the void as Jin-hyuk picks himself up, preparing for the true trial of the Dragon Temple. Suddenly, Jin-hyuk hears a metallic sound. He turns his head and notices it's an armor similar to the ones he saw earlier, approaching his position. Suddenly, the armor stops. Jin-hyuk starts analyzing the space around him. All he sees is the void of the cosmos, full of stars and distant galaxies. He's standing on a floating platform, with gears and a giant clock overhead. It seems to be a space beyond space and time. Jin-hyuk understands he must defeat the armor if he wants to pass the trial. He boasts at the armor, since it's just one and moments ago he defeated an entire army of them. He even taunts the armor, asking if this is just the warm-up and the hard part comes later. Suddenly, the armor speaks and tells him to prepare, because the trial has already begun. Jin-hyuk still doesn't take the armor seriously, asking if it's different from the others just because it talks. Suddenly, "A warning is only given once!" the armor shouts as it charges at the hunter with terrifying speed. Jin-hyuk is caught off guard by the attack, not expecting such speed from his opponent. The chapter begins at night, with two masked figures dressed in black jumping across the city rooftops. They drop down to meet with a third, their captain, who's dressed like them. They apologize to him, saying they couldn't find Jin-hyuk's house on this side of the city either, that they went to the mentioned address but there was nothing there. The third one curses, saying if they don't find that bastard, they're finished. That Juntae will punish them severely if they don't find him, so they have to find him no matter what. They make the drastic decision to destroy every single house in the area, since eventually they'll destroy Jin-hyuk's as well. Suddenly, an arrow flies at the captain and pierces through his neck from side to side. The other two are shocked, and as they search for the source of the arrow, one of them is fatally struck by another. The third flees in terror, fearing it's Jin-hyuk's ally. Suddenly, Lucia appears running beside him. Without him noticing, she grabs the masked man by the neck and slits his throat with a knife. Lucia returns to the house, relieved to have stopped the threat. Haina greets her and asks what happened, since she rushed out without a word. Lucia replies that the Titan Guild's pursuit team came looking for them. Haina is shocked at how relentless their pursuers are, but Lucia says she handled them quickly and even cleaned up the scene after taking them out. She mentions overhearing the pursuers say they'd destroy the whole neighborhood just to find the house, since they suspect it's the only place she and the master could have fled to. Lucia says if a large group comes, she won't be able to handle them alone, so her only hope is to pray that Jin-hyuk returns soon and much stronger. He's the only one who can turn the situation around. Back to where we left off at the end of the previous chapter, in the Dragon Temple. Jin-hyuk is shocked by the armor's swift attack. He fails to react in time and the sword slashes through his neck. Suddenly, Jin-hyuk screams in terror while grabbing his neck. Still in shock, he realizes he's back in the temple and wonders what the hell happened. He thinks about it. He's sure his throat was sliced, and doesn't understand why he's still alive. Then a voice laughs at him. It's the hooded old man's voice. He asks if he's surprised and says the place where he died is sort of a virtual space, so he shouldn't worry about dying there since it has no consequences. He adds that Jin-hyuk is still weak, and that the Dragon Temple isn't just a place to grow stronger, but also a testing ground. That's why he must avoid any sense of complacency, as the mind is also a measure of strength, and he's sorry but he'll have to get stronger to return again. Jin-hyuk regrets having been arrogant and underestimating his opponent. He knows that if he doesn't grow stronger, his friends will die at the hands of the guild and Juntae. He begs the old man to let him try again, slamming the ground with all his strength, asking for a second chance to become stronger. The old man says he doesn't get it, and tells him nothing would change if he faced the trial again right now. He'd just die once more. Jin-hyuk shouts with determination, "I'll only know if I try. As long as I don't let my guard down I can win." The hooded man jokingly says he's never seen someone this desperate before, and he's surprised that Jin-hyuk doesn't give up even after experiencing death. To which Jin-hyuk replies that if he were afraid of dying, he wouldn't have started the trial in the first place. The old man is delighted by the young one's words and makes an exception, allowing Jin-hyuk a second chance. Jin-hyuk thanks the old man for his wisdom. Back in the trial space, Jin-hyuk declares a rematch to the armor. the armor says, returning after experiencing death shows admirable resolve. Jin-hyuk says he was careless before, but won't meet such a pointless end this time. The armor praises the young man's mindset again, and leaps to strike, beginning the battle. This time Jin-hyuk blocks it with his bat, but notices the armor's strength is overwhelming. Jin-hyuk is losing the power struggle and needs to come up with a plan. He decides to focus his aura on his legs to form a sturdier stance. He manages to repel the armor's attack, gaining some distance. He's amazed by the blowback from the impact, making him wonder what kind of monster he's facing. Jin-hyuk thinks a hand-to-hand battle won't work, so he decides to strike and retreat. As he charges in, the armor says it's impressive how he can focus his aura on specific parts, but by concentrating it below, his upper part was left exposed. The armor takes advantage of that to hit Jin-hyuk and send him flying. Jin-hyuk recovers midair and lands on his feet, but is overwhelmed by the thought that the armor seems to be reading his moves. Then, a memory of his fight with Juntae flashes in his mind. Meanwhile, the armor asks if that's all he's got while preparing to charge in with a final lethal blow. The armor's slash, charged with devastating power, is suddenly blocked by Jin-hyuk. "Did you think I'd just accept death quietly?" says the hunter, as he effectively repels the armor with a solid counterattack. Both fighters glare at each other while recovering in the center of the arena. "I had a hunch, and it seems I was right. You're predicting where to strike by reading my aura." "Right," says Jin-hyuk as he looks at the armor, proud of his discovery. The armor congratulates him for noticing, but threatens that it won't change the fight's outcome. Jin-hyuk agrees that as annoying as it is, the armor is right. He knows that if he keeps fighting like this, he'll eventually be defeated. So, he decides to take a mana potion from his inventory to coat his entire body in aura, preventing the statue from predicting his movements. As Jin-hyuk drinks the potion, the armor interrupts him with a surprise attack, telling him to focus on the fight. Jin-hyuk barely blocks the attack. While they clash weapons, the armor notices Jin-hyuk coated his whole body in aura, and he sarcastically congratulates her for finally noticing. Then the armor asks what that drug was that he used to boost his aura, and questions whether he can claim that strength as his own since it came from a drug. Jin-hyuk says he doesn't care where the strength comes from, only that he'll take it from wherever to win. The armor retorts that, if that's how he sees things, then he should prove it to the end. Both clash in a fierce duel of blows and dodges, completely evenly matched. The statue acknowledges that Jin-hyuk is finally putting up a bit of a fight, and the hunter, with his bat wrapped in lightning, tells him there's still more to come. He dodges a slash from the armor and readies a devastating energy charge strike, but not before warning his rival that the impact's gonna hurt. We see the flash caused by the blow, but not the result of it. Drastic scene change, we return to the human world, where we see Juncheol in the back seat of a car talking to his brother, who's driving. Juncheol shows his brother that the streets are packed with guild soldiers, and they're probably looking for Jin-hyuk. His brother gets that given the situation, standing out ain't exactly in their best interest. Juncheol agrees and says it's best not to raise any suspicion. Immediately, the blonde makes a call on his phone, which is answered by the secretary of the guild master, Haina. Juncheol introduces himself, and says Jin-hyuk probably told her about him. Haina recognizes the name and confirms he was mentioned before as the man who introduced them to the underground doctor. Juncheol asks about the condition of the Titan guild master, and Haina says thanks to him, he's recovering well. The secretary thanks him for the call to express her sincere gratitude. Juncheol says there's no need to thank him, and mentions he's near Jin-hyuk's house. He adds that the whole area is swarming with Titans, so they must know the master's there. He tells her if things keep going this way, by the time Sang-ho recovers, they'll have to fight off a swarm of Titan guild members surrounding them. Haina listens silently and attentively. Juncheol says he's got a way to solve this problem, but he'd like to explain it in person if she's willing to hear him out. Back in the trial space, the armor tells Jin-hyuk he looked like he had something up his sleeve as they clash weapons, but he's not impressed by the outcome. Jin-hyuk wonders what kind of monster he's fighting, and can't believe he's still fine after taking that hit. "You're careless. Just cause your plan didn't work doesn't mean you get to stand there like an idiot," says the armor as he kicks Jin-hyuk in the chest. The young hunter stumbles back from the impact. The armor challenges him, saying if he's got anything else up his sleeve, he better show it now. Jin-hyuk's still shocked that even the lightning didn't work, so he comes clean with his rival. He confesses to the armor that he's got no more tricks left, so he asks that this time, they go all out and put their lives on the line. Then, the armor takes an attack stance and tells Jin-hyuk he'll have to match the bet. A yellow aura starts surrounding the armor. Jin-hyuk notices and realizes its divine power, which makes him wonder if his rival is actually a paladin or something. The armor replies he's not a paladin, but came pretty close. Both get ready to resume the fight, and Jin-hyuk tells him to attack whenever he wants. The armor, charged with divine energy, acknowledges the young hunter's confidence despite the difficulty. Jin-hyuk says he's got no choice, since he's determined to get stronger no matter what. Then, both charge fiercely toward the center of the arena. As he heads into the inevitable clash, Jin-hyuk wonders what to do now, since none of his tricks worked. He decides there's only one thing left to do: finish it in one hit with everything he's got. Both scream as they're about to collide in what looks like the final blow from both sides, an all-or-nothing strike that'll decide the fight's outcome. Jin-hyuk is fighting a knight in heavy armor with a huge sword. Jin-hyuk felt like he was giving it everything with that red bat he carried, yet the knight still managed to defeat him without mercy. Jin-hyuk decided it was time to use all his aura against him. The strong knight, defending himself from Jin-hyuk, mockingly says he's betting everything on that last strike. The knight breaks Jin-hyuk's red bat and defeats him. Jin-hyuk tells him his aura was scattering. Even so, Jin-hyuk, lying on the ground, tells the knight he's too drained to even move. The knight says that since he's so weak, he only destroyed his sword and that can't be the limit of his power, since that iron sword can be replaced with an aura blade. Jin-hyuk feels exhausted and utterly spent from the effort. The knight asks how he plans to defend himself in that state, cause if he's got no other trick, he's gonna finish him off. Jin-hyuk, defeated on the ground, tells the knight he gave it his all and doesn't regret it, then says if he's gonna kill him, to do it now. He adds, almost as a question, that even if he defeats and kills him there in that galaxy, the knight will still be alive. Suddenly, Jin-hyuk finds courage and shouts at the knight, "I'll keep challenging you again and again!" The knight says the trial is over and actually, this test wasn't about beating him, since he was the examiner and the judge. The real trial was whether Jin-hyuk could earn his approval, or not. Jin-hyuk is left stunned and asks if he passed or not. The knight in heavy metal armor replies that there are things to improve, but he passed the test. The knight disappears in an explosion, leaving Jin-hyuk alone in the ring floating in the middle of a galaxy. Seconds later, a man appears in front of Jin-hyuk, looking like a wizard since his hood covered his face so much you couldn't see it clearly. Jin-hyuk, surprised, asks who he is. This man answers that Jin-hyuk's potential is remarkable but he just needs to change his personality, and that he was impressed by how he gave it his all till the end. Jin-hyuk still doesn't get any real answers about this new and mysterious man, thinking maybe he's the same knight from before. The man tells him to shut up and listen, cause he's gonna teach him how to become stronger. He tells Jin-hyuk that his aura is a power rooted in divine energy, and says the method Jin-hyuk needs to use is simple. He proceeds to place his hand on Jin-hyuk's head, radiating power onto him. The young man freaks out and asks what he's doing, but the man ignores him and finishes the spell over his head. The man, with an intense stare, tells him to connect with the divine and to carefully use the power he's about to receive. Jin-hyuk appears standing in another galaxy, naked, wondering where he is. Suddenly, he finds himself face to face with a giant monster that looks like a dragon with glowing red eyes. Jin-hyuk thinks this dragon is gonna eat him, but everything changes when the creature speaks. The dragon tells him there's no need to fear, and that the man brought him there so the dragon could grant him the awaited divine power. The dragon starts spinning like a top, non-stop, summoning that divine power for him. Within seconds, it vanishes and transforms into yellow energy that flies straight into Kang Jin-hyuk. Jin-hyuk, shocked by everything, accepts the divine power granted to him, as it's the grace of a god who looks favorably upon him. A sunny morning streamed through the tall windows of a luxurious 3-story house, whose marble and wood finishes gave a sense of warmth and elegance. Inside that house, specifically in the kitchen, there were 3 people. The atmosphere, despite the morning light and the smell of fresh coffee, was thick with tension. The 3 figures present shared a clear, almost palpable unease. One of them was Secretary Lee, with her round glasses that highlighted her sharp, intelligent eyes. Her posture was stiff and her gaze fixed on the magic door that took up a prominent spot on one of the walls. Next to her stood Lee Junchul, whose strong and calm presence contrasted with the tense air around them. And lastly, there was Lucia, who, unlike the other two, couldn't stay still. Lucia paced back and forth in the kitchen, her fingers playing with the edge of her blouse while her gaze kept returning to the portal. She was waiting for Jin-hyuk with a particular impatience, different from the others. She wasn't expecting him through the front door, but through a magic door that had appeared right there, in the kitchen. That door had the shape of an oval portal that vibrated slightly, like it had a heartbeat of its own, and its surface shimmered with violet tones that looked like a moving galaxy. Lucia stared at it, her breath quickening every time a wave of energy pulsed from it. "The dungeon door," she said quietly, almost to herself, with a touch of awe. She stood there, watching as the portal started to expand, growing to cover almost the entire wall, as if space itself were being swallowed by the other dimension. A supernatural energy began to seep into the room. Then, she felt it. A powerful aura crossed the invisible threshold of the door, wrapping around her. Lucia squinted. That power! It couldn't be anyone else. It was Jin-hyuk. She could feel it. His essence, his energy, that weight in the air that only he could leave behind. But something didn't feel quite right. When Jin-hyuk finally emerged from the portal, his figure was wrapped in a subtle, yet evident glow. Lucia was left speechless. It was him, no doubt, but there was something different, something she couldn't quite place. "Why are you so surprised?" he asked in a calm voice. Lucia blinked, snapping out of her shock. "You look different. Maybe you passed all the dragon's trials," she replied with a tone of uncertainty hiding a growing unease. Without thinking twice, Lucia reached behind her back, where she firmly gripped a knife. In a swift, almost instinctive motion, she tried to attack Jin-hyuk, but he, with razor-sharp reflexes and a supernatural calm, stopped her effortlessly. "Why did you take so long?" she shouted, frustrated. "You made me anxious. You said it wouldn't take that long." Jin-hyuk lowered his gaze, slightly embarrassed. "I'm sorry. And I just wanted to become stronger. If I didn't, I would have never reached this new power," he replied. Lucia, still holding the knife, sighed deeply. "It's fine, but be more careful. You can't just disappear like that." She put away the knife and turned toward the door. "I'll leave the house to you. I need to rest. I'm going back to the dungeon," she said. Before crossing the portal again, Lucia turned and gave one last warning. "The perception magic will vanish soon. When that happens, the Titans Guild will find this place and come for you. You have to prepare a plan." Without waiting for a reply, she vanished into the portal. Jin-hyuk was left alone for a moment, contemplating the empty space Lucia had left behind. Then, taking a deep breath, he headed to the room where he knew the other two were waiting. When he reached the room, he found Lee Junchul and Secretary Lee. They both turned as they saw him enter. He paused for a moment, speechless. "When did you arrive?" they asked almost in unison. Jin-hyuk replied with another question. "Did something happen while I was gone?" he said. Secretary Lee shook her head. "No, the guild leader is recovering. We took care of the pursuers," she said. Then, with a curious look, she added, "And Lucia?" "She went to rest," Jin-hyuk replied simply. Lee Junchul then stepped forward. His expression turned more serious. "Since I couldn't reach you, I came personally," he explained. He paused briefly before continuing. "Jin-hyuk, I have a plan. I want you to form a guild with me," he said. Jin-hyuk opened his eyes in surprise. "What?" he said, puzzled. Before he could say more, Secretary Lee jumped in energetically. "How can you propose that? I thought it was just to get us out of the house, like you said before." Lee Junchul raised a calm hand. "Easy. Hear me out. Even though Seo Sango is recovering, he won't return to the Titans Guild. No one went to rescue him. That group is rotten inside," he said. Secretary Lee muttered bitterly. "They are." Lee Junchul then dared to voice what he had been thinking for a long time. "That's why I want to create a new guild. One that replaces them. One with real strength, without corruption. And I want you to be its core, Jin-hyuk." He pulled out a document with detailed notes and showed it to him. It listed required resources, potential members, facility locations, training strategies. It was a meticulous plan. However, he was also honest. "We can't defeat them easily. We'll face strong enemies. Kong Junti, for example. He's still a colossal obstacle." Secretary Lee frowned. "And you think we can take him on?" she said. Lee Junchul nodded. "That's why I need Jin-hyuk. If you decide to fight, I'll bet everything on you," he said. Jin-hyuk stared at him. "Why me and not Seo Sango?" he asked, frowning. Lee Junchul answered firmly. Because you survived Kong's board. That means you can do it. That means you're different. And then, as if putting all his cards on the table, Lee Junchul added, if that rumor isn't true, we'll act like nothing happened. But if it is, then I'll bet everything on you. What do you say? The room fell silent. The tension could be cut with a knife. Everyone awaited his answer. Jin Hyuk, with a deep gaze, finally said, it depends on the plan. Show me, and I'll decide. It was a new day in the city, sunny as always. The sun was stronger than ever and everyone was going about their chores. But inside a large and imposing building in the city center, a fight was happening. Inside that building was a young man being beaten by a tall and strong man. It was the guild master of Tyrant, Jo1Chol. How dare you interrupt like that? Roared the enormous titan Jo1Chol at the poor, vulnerable young man. He left him collapsed on the floor, unable to move. Apparently, he wasn't the only one. Kang Jin-hyun had warned that the titans were strategically hunting them down without rest, and that's exactly what was happening. Moments earlier, Lee Junchul had shared with Jin Hyuk his plan to create a new guild. Lee Junchul proposed involving the Tyrant Guild. That was shocking to Jin Hyuk and Secretary Lee since it sounded utterly reckless. Lee Junchul explained that it would be like using one enemy against another. He added it was crucial because it would involve Jo1Chol, an S-rank hunter, and his master. He believed they would be on equal footing to fight against the Titan Guild. Secretary Lee broke the silence, and said it would be difficult since the Titans were in chaos due to the Alurano accident. Worried, she asked Lee Junchul how they'd get them to start a war while going through such chaos. Lee Junchul quickly replied that it would be easy to make them fight each other since the Titan Guild had already been expanding into territories that used to belong to the Tyrant Guild. He stated the Tyrant Guild must be upset about it. Jin Hyuk let out a merciful laugh, having understood Lee Junchul's point, then said that if they gave the Tyrants a reason to be angry with the Titans. Secretary Lee instantly finished the sentence. They would attack the Titan Guild immediately, she exclaimed quickly. Then, Secretary Lee asked Kong Lin Hyuk how they would reveal that, and what he suggested was to tell them about the Alurano accident from the Tyrant Guild, since they were the ones who reported it. That made sense to Lee Junchul, and he gave them the approval. Still, Lee Junchul had something else in mind. He wanted to add a third factor while the other two collapsed. This third factor was about destroying and uniting Ha and Young-suk, the leaders of the Titan Guild, and Kong Jun-tae at the same time. That's when Lee Junchul got serious and asked Kong Lin Hyuk again if he would officially join his guild. That seriousness didn't intimidate Kong Lin Hyuk, so in a confident and defiant tone, he said yes. Secretary Lee, upon hearing the answer, smiled. Kong Lin Hyuk wanted to give the new guild a meaningful and distinctive name to add a sense of might to it. Kong Lin Hyuk decided to name it Pantheon, which was the name of the temple of the Olympian gods who overthrew the Titans in mythology. Both Secretary Lee and Lee Junchul agreed and accepted the new name of the guild. Immediately, Lee Junchul ordered them both to begin the mission right away. First, he asked Secretary Lee to leak the information and also find out if anyone from the Titan Guild would want to take their side. She accepted without hesitation. And second, he assigned Kong Lin Hyuk another task. This consisted of finding Young Diyun and asking him to create an illusion of Secretary Lee and himself escaping so that those looking for them would follow and get distracted. Also, to mention that Han Young-suk had removed Seo Sang-ho from power, to which Young Diyun would respond that that's why Master Seo Sang-ho is here. Kong Lin Hyuk was to mention that Master Seo Sang-ho had asked him for help because those Titan bastards were desperate to find them. He had to mention that he was nearly killed by Kong Jun-tae while being chased, but now he could defeat him without a problem. That powerful confession would leave Young Diyun shocked, and that way he could ask him to join the new guild. While the Titan bastards would be searching for them all over the city, in the city center, Jo1Chol was having a conversation with a man. He mentioned that the Titan bastards had killed and reported Alurano's death, and that this information came straight from Seo Sang-ho's secretary. He also mentioned that Seo Sang-ho was going to leave the guild and that as long as he got paid, he wouldn't care. He handed Jo1Chol a report where everything that had happened with the Titan Guild and Alurano's death was written, and how they reported it, and took it to the media to cover it up. Jo1Chol frowned and shouted furiously. Inside a luxurious and prestigious building located in the financial heart of the city, There was a man dressed entirely in black, with a hood covering most of his face. He was running desperately through the wide, gleaming marble hallways, going up and down escalators, completely ignoring the receptionists and guards who watched him in astonishment. His breathing was ragged, as if the weight of a terrible truth was pushing him forward, preventing him from stopping to catch his breath. As he rushed through the different floors of the building, he anxiously muttered broken phrases. "This is bad, this is really bad." The words barely escaped his lips, but carried an unmistakable sense of alarm. The news he had just received could not wait another second. He felt that every moment of delay could cost lives or unleash a catastrophe. He needed to reach that office as soon as possible, to that someone who, unknowingly, was waiting for information that would change the course of events. Without bothering to announce his presence, the man in black violently opened the door of an office located on one of the upper floors. The metallic sound of the handle turning violently echoed throughout the room. Inside the office, in a sober and elegantly decorated atmosphere, were two people seated: Kang Junte, with his unshakable demeanor and stone-cold face, and a man with slicked-back gray hair, wearing thin glasses and a fine-cut navy blue suit. They were in the middle of a private conversation, speaking in low voices, probably discussing strategies or reviewing confidential information. But the sudden intrusion of the informant interrupted everything. The man in black, still panting, raised his voice with a mix of fear and urgency. "Tyrant has invaded our territory," he shouted, eyes wide open, as if he couldn't fully believe it. The gray-haired man looked up with a serious expression and asked, without changing the tone of his voice but with clear interest, "Is this because they're seeking revenge for the territories we took from them?" There was a tense silence. The informant, still recovering from the run, swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. Finally, with a slight hesitation in his voice, he said, "Yes and no. The guild leader, Jo1Chol, he's the one leading the invasion." Upon hearing that, the white-haired man reacted with contained fury. "Then he has officially declared war on us," he exclaimed, slamming the table hard. The noise was enough to make nearby objects tremble slightly. Trying to regain control of the situation, he asked, "Where is that bastard now?" The informant lowered his head, with a helpless gesture. "Our men tried to stop him, but they failed. We lost soldiers and now it's hard to track him. He's disappeared." Kang Junte let out a dry, mocking chuckle. "Facing him? What stupidity. That guy is way too strong to be stopped that easily." The tension in the room suddenly increased. The white-haired man, previously composed, stood up from his chair and began pacing back and forth, gesturing with his arms and breathing heavily. Desperation took over his voice. "This can't be happening. We have to report this to the association immediately. We have to stop this war before we all end up dead," he said. The informant tried to soften the gravity of the situation. "The association has already been informed. They send out warnings through official channels, but they're not intervening directly. They're staying out of it." Kang Junte crossed his arms with an expression of cold certainty. "They're not going to do anything," he stated harshly. "The association isn't going to stop this conflict. Do you know why? Because they're waiting for this. They want the guilds to fight each other, to destroy one another. They're eager to see who survives." Meanwhile, in District 9, on the other side of the city center, Kang Junte's words were coming true. The district, normally bustling and full of activity, had turned into a full-blown war zone. Explosions, screams, and energy blasts echoed through the streets. Buildings shook, the asphalt was cracked, and abandoned cars burned like blazing torches. Local authorities had sent out urgent notifications for all citizens to evacuate immediately. Emergency shelters were activated, and assistance drones flew over the area. Among the fighters, one member of the Tyrant Guild stood out for his brutality. His hands and arms were engulfed in flames, and his attack was devastating. He hurled fire in all directions, turning everything he touched into ashes. His target was clear. He wanted to eliminate Kang Lin-Hyuk and his team. The avenue where the battle was taking place looked apocalyptic. Chunks of concrete flew through the air, smoke covered everything, and the heat was scorching. In the midst of that chaos, a little girl was trapped between rubble and flames. She was nearly hit by one of the assailants' fire blasts, but Kang Lin-Hyuk, once again showing his bravery, saved her just in time. Realizing the situation was getting out of control, Kang Lin-Hyuk spoke firmly to Secretary Lee, who was accompanying him on the battlefield. Make sure all civilians are evacuated. The other members of Pantheon should prioritize it too. No one else should get hurt. While the fight continued, in the office where Kang Junte and the white-haired man remained, the conversation had taken a new turn. The informant, a bit calmer now, shared new information. I've heard that a new guild has formed. They call themselves Pantheon. The white-haired man frowned. I've never heard that name. What's known about them? Kang Junte shrugged, but his tone was sharper. Maybe some of their members require attention. The white-haired man narrowed his eyes, starting to connect the dots. Do you think this new guild could be connected to Kong Lin Hyuk, or even to Seo Sang Ho? Kang Junte let out a dry laugh, clearly irritated. That's ridiculous. But despite his mockery, something on his face showed discomfort. The name, Pantheon, echoed strangely, as if it had a hidden meaning he still couldn't decipher. The white-haired man, thoughtful, murmured, "What if that name was chosen on purpose? What if all of this is happening exactly as they planned?" There was a brief silence. Then, a truth struck him like lightning. They're investigating us. They're analyzing the tyrants from the shadows. All this chaos. It's no coincidence. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the shrill sound of a phone. The white-haired man answered immediately. On the other end of the line, a trusted informant spoke urgently. "Sir, we managed to locate Jo1CHOL. He's on his way to the building. He's coming toward you." The man tensed up. His eyes widened in surprise and tension. He looked at Kang Junte and said quickly, "He's coming. He's on his way to this building." Kang Junte didn't flinch. His expression was icy. He stood up, slowly, with a gaze that seemed to pierce through walls. "Then let him come. This building will be his grave," he added, with a cold and fatal voice. District 9 was in chaos. Citizens were terrified by the different fights taking place in the streets. They had been displaced. The members of the Pantheon Guild fought with all their might to avoid being attacked by members of the opposing side. Lee Junchul was in charge of containing and evacuating the citizens. Lee Junchul led a large part of the evacuees to a park to explain that the guild out there protecting them was Pantheon. Lee Junchul typed the name of the guild on his phone and began showing it to the people. They, scared, wondered about this new guild that came to save and protect them. Seconds later, an officer from the association's police approached Lee Junchul asking if he was the leader of that new guild, and he said yes. The officer thanked Lee Junchul for his empathetic help to the evacuees. Lee Junchul thanked him and said he was trying to do his best with his team. Lee Junchul told him about the new guild Pantheon, and the association officer left. Lee Junchul was happy for the recognition that meant for the guild and considered he had done his part, and that the rest was up to Kang Lin Hyuk. Kang Lin Hyuk was in the city fighting the opposing forces. Hours before the entire evacuation, Kang Lin Hyuk, Lee Junchul, and Secretary Lee were planning how everything would go. Suddenly, the conversation was interrupted by Kang Lin Hyuk's phone. It was Young Dae-yoon on the line. He was warning Kang Lin Hyuk about Jo1CHOL's location. Jo1CHOL was heading to the building where Kang Junte was. Immediately, Kang Lin Hyuk said he would go there to stop them. Secretary Lee got worried about Kang Lin Hyuk and asked him why he was going there. Kang Lin Hyuk replied that it was too dangerous to let Jo1CHOL fight with Kang Junte because the city would be completely destroyed. That's when Kang Lin Hyuk revealed his plan to Secretary Lee and Lee Junchul. He confessed he would eliminate both at once. Secretary Lee was stunned and told him that was very dangerous, just like Lee Junchul did. But even so, Kang Lin Hyuk gathered courage and declared he would finish both of them and that the ones who should really be worried were them. Kang Lin Hyuk set out quickly, and Lee Junchul and Secretary Lee wished him good luck in that fatal encounter. Jo1CHOL arrived at the main building where Kang Junte was. A group of men guarding the entrance to prevent anyone from entering the building saw Jo1CHOL. They alerted their superiors and decided to restrain him. Jo1CHOL defeated them instantly and, before killing one of them, forced them to inform their boss to come down and face him. In the building, the white-haired man and Kang Junte waited a little longer to attack him. Firmly, Kang Junte told the white-haired man that he would bring him Jo1CHOL's head as a gift once he came down. Without hesitation, the battle between Kang Junte and Jo1CHOL had begun. There were no unnecessary words nor attempts at negotiation. only a tension that could be cut with a knife and the weight of old grudges hanging in the air. Both knew what was at stake, and neither had any intention of backing down. The fight was inevitable. Kang Junte slowly descended the steps of the main building, with a firm stride and a defiant gaze. His silhouette stood out against the structure that had housed him as a leader, as a symbol of power and dominance. In front of him, waiting eagerly like a hunter for his prey, stood Jo1Chol. The Titan didn't hide his excitement. His eyes gleamed with a mix of rage, thirst for justice, and something more primal, the desire to face his enemy head-on. From the base of the building, Jo1Chol raised his voice, his vibrant tone filled with contempt and fury. As he shouted, he brutally took down the last men assigned to guard the entrance. One by one they fell before his power, unable to resist his brutality. There was no room for mercy. With every strike, with every charge, Jo1Chol reaffirmed his intention to reach Kang Junte, no matter who stood in his way. But there was no need to advance any further. The wait was over. His rival stood right in front of him. Their eyes met for an eternal moment, in which there was no need for words. The history between them, the secrets shared and recent betrayals said it all. Then, with a roar that shook the air, they launched themselves at each other. The fight was instant and violent. There were no probing moves or warnings. From the very first moment, both fighters gave it their all. Each blow they exchanged made the ground tremble. Jo1Chol fought with the strength of someone who has been betrayed, with the fury of someone seeking justice. For his part, Kang Junte moved with terrifying precision, like someone who had already calculated every step of the encounter. His gaze never left that of his opponent for even a second. For a brief moment, while exchanging blows, Jo1Chol raised his voice. "Where is Seo Sang-ho?" he asked, without hiding his rage. Kang Junte's response was as cold as it was calculated. With a smile full of venom, he replied, "If you care so much, ask him when you're dead." That phrase echoed like a gunshot. It was a direct provocation, a personal declaration of war that ignited the fire between them even more. After those words, they both intensified the battle. They were not only fighting for their guilds, but for their pasts, for their losses, for everything they represented. Every blow, every technique, every burst of power marked a new level of ferocity. The battlefield was now a scene of destruction, and no onlooker could determine for sure who had the advantage. Many kilometers away, in a different dimension far from the chaos reigning in the city, was Lucia. She had decided to take a brief break after hours of study and attempts at understanding. Sitting inside an ancient temple, surrounded by columns worn by time and an atmosphere of supernatural calm, she tried to decipher a message that seemed to resist her efforts. In front of her, an ancient scroll floated suspended in the air, covered with mystical symbols that changed shape each time she analyzed them with her power. Lucia frowned, confused. She knew that message had a hidden purpose, a key that would allow her to unravel the mystery of the magic circle within. But no matter how hard she tried, there was one last part she could not fully understand. It was as if the message mocked her efforts, challenging her to go further. Still, she did not give up. Lucia knew that inside that magic circle lay the key to returning to her former dimension, to closing a cycle that had been left open for a long time. She took a deep breath, trying not to be carried away by frustration. Around her, the temple remained in absolute silence, as if respecting the importance of her task. In a moment of pause, her thoughts drifted. Her mind inevitably went to Kang Junte. She thought of him, his determined gaze, the way he had changed since she met him. She wondered how he was now, in what place of that chaotic world he might be, and if he was okay. Despite the time and distance, she felt a deep connection with him, as if something invisible still bound them. She reflected on everything she had lived alongside him, and on who he was now. A faint smile formed on her face. Lucia was convinced that Kang Junte was not only well, but had surely become something more. An elite hunter, a leader capable of changing the fate of many. Perhaps even someone greater than any known S rank. That thought gave her strength. If he could face his demons, so could she. She closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and returned her attention to the magic circle. She had to succeed. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to like and share. Remember, if you want the next part, just comment. Next part. With that said, I'll see you in the next video.